Right, everybody, thank you for attending. It's not a planning committee meeting. I'm just trying this different seating arrangement for reasons we won't go into. But welcome everybody to this meeting and everybody's watching. First item is apologies for absence. I think we've only got one. Otherwise, we've got a full complement of
we've had
on this occasion. So thank you.
Apologies from Councillor Ray, Chair.
Okay. And then declarations of interest. I've got one on agenda item 6. There's just a reference there to cases. The Citizen Advice Organisation as a trustee. That's at 313 and repeated later on. So that's just my declaration of interest there. There's no decisions to be made, I don't think. And Councillor Evans in a similar situation, I think.
Yes, I'm in the same situation as Councillor Norman, declaring interest and view of the fact that I'm a trustee at cases.
Okay. Councillor Robertson, have you got an interest that you want to declare?
Thank you, Chair. Also an interest in relation to that item around cases, because my
Oh yes,
yes,
yes, you've got a very good
personal interest there, non-fiduciary.
No, but thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Next item then, item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting. There are a couple of typos that people spotted and something else. But Sue Woodward first.
Yeah, minute number 28, there's a typos there where community infrastructure levy, CIL, is referred to as SIL. And then on minute 29, the last paragraph of that particular minute on page 8, I think there's a typo there. It says members queried the initial setup of the company was to provide housing for sale, yet housing hasn't been debriefed and asked for an update. I really don't understand what that means.
Yeah, members queried that
It should have
Clarifying.
delivered rather than debriefed.
Sorry?
Perhaps read delivered rather than
Yeah.
delivered.
Oh yes, I get you. Okay, anything else? If not, thank you very much. I understand that the report's already gone out to the full council, but full council is never asked to agree the minutes, so you know they'll just be there for information. Although I say, if people pronounced it kill instead of sill, we wouldn't have this problem in my view. Right, minutes of the previous meeting. Health matters. I've got my report there. Unfortunately, this try to keep up the standard that Councillor Leona Leong set up originally, and that's my report there. And there's a meeting this morning, and Chair of Healthcare and Overview and Scrutiny Committee is here now. Not that he's here to answer questions on that committee, but there's a meeting this morning at 10 o'clock, and got my report there. If there are any questions if I can help with, any questions on that? Oh, so and Jamie, yes.
Yeah, I was interested in the report, your report, Chair, on freedom to speak up.
Oh, yeah.
And it says there's a national network of guardians. Each organisation has an executive director and non-executive director lead. I just wonder whether we could find out who that they are. It's no good having that information about freedom to speak up if we don't know who the request and so on should be addressed to. So it would be useful to know who they are. It was also interesting to note, I think, in your report, Chair, that you pointed out that 191 organisations are not good and outstanding, which is a bit of a worry. It's all very well, bigging up the ones who are good and outstanding, 56%, but 44% are not good and outstanding. So I presume that means requires improvement or inadequate, which is worrying.
Well, that's the only conclusion I could come to, because the argument is that I think it's quite correct that the CQC, CQC is not up to speed on these things, and there are delays and so on, but you can't quote one set of figures and therefore ignore the other set of figures. It did come up today as well this morning, about 25% being in that situation with something else. So yeah, we'll find out about the names. It might well be in the report. It's a very big report, but I might be able to find that out for you. We'll get back to you. If that goes in the minutes, it'll help me to make sure that's done. Damien, please. Yeah.
Yeah, just in relation to an item on page. Well, page isn't moving now. Anyway, summary background. Item B, number 3, it makes reference to offer every Staffordshire child and young person the best start in life and chance to achieve their potential. Is it possible that it could be expanded to include adults as well? Because it seems that we ought to be trying to maximise everybody's potential rather than just young people and then forgetting about them.
You have to help me with the way you're talking about. You've got my report there. What are you talking about?
Page 11.
It is page 11.
Oh, I see. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay.
B3.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's something we'll take back, or Leona may take back to the Healthcare and Scrutiny Committee. Anybody else? Issue? Okay, I'll say there's a meeting this morning, and so there's a lot of good work there. And of course, Wallace Quarry, which may not be of particular interest to us now here, but Wallace Quarry has been in the news recently, and they're appealing against closure. But we did have the environmental agency there and others, as we had in July there. So yeah, there is work going on. And what was interesting this morning, I will be doing a report, is that the work that will be going on afterwards as well. Those the concerns about health issues, health related issues, and keeping data and keep reviewing on the progress of children's health, because there were some very disturbing figures, and whether it was correlation with particular illnesses, but of course getting the evidence of that is another matter. But that would still be going on as well as the monitoring of the site, which won't just close. There's got to do something with the site, even if they lose the appeal, as I understand it. So yeah, okay. The thing was that we got the task group, the health scrutiny task group, but I'll refer to that when it comes later on. Oh, sorry, Leanna, sorry.
Health and well-being.
Yeah, you did say.
Shall I do that? Shall I do that?
You did.
Okay. So attended to a health and well-being board. So there's quite a few updates on there. So I thought I'd give one on those. So we're looking at, so one item was looking at the healthy weight progress update, which is really important to tackle obesity. And there are countrywide partnerships, which I'm looking to see, more information about around this, because there are district levels which are being developed. Looking at that. So it'd be really good to see what we're doing in our district level as well. So items that priority-wise they're looking at is such as smoking, school meals, processed food. How can we put that to one side and have something more healthy instead? So I know it is time of, it's going to be festive season, but again, it'd be good to remind to everyone as well, like also to make sure that we do eat sensible and drink sensible at the same time as well. Previously, I mentioned in regards to interactive online Staffordshire joint strategic need assessment dashboard. So it's basically looking at the county-wise, the latest data in regards to population, children, aged adults, aging well, in regards to their health needs and overview. So we're waiting for the products to look at the district area. So that will be district level. So hopefully once that comes soon, I will update everyone on that. But it was mentioned that they are looking into district level to make into that, which would be really helpful for us to see in our maybe district level and into wards later on as well. Another priority was mentioned was health in early life. So how to prevent death in the early life. So factors which came in was smoking, alcohol issues, safe sleeping, neglect. All of these were just quite, it was quite, this was the focus, because it seems to be, to prevent death, it should be really 0%, but actually there are percentages which have been raised in regards to these items, very young early life years as well. And there are, and then also there is health watch update along with aging as well. So what was found was basically promoting older people to live more independently in their own homes for long as well. So how can they focus on healthy life as they age on? So it was found for example, 65, the age of 65 was doubled, 85, the years of 85 and above was tripled, and was decreased in working age as well. So that means there are more funding is required and staff to maintain the existing services we have, along with the working age, which is decreasing as well. So that's something that they're looking at as well at the moment. Health, and the item was alcohol strategy. So, sorry, just to go back, to the, alcohol strategy. So basically, there was also an update, which is alcohol strategy was to be a priority because there seems to be increasing alcohol-related issues in regards to health and social care, criminal justice system. And it was found that the age 44 to 65 was high level in women, excessive consumption, and then result in poor health and disability in early on as well. So their strategy right now is to focus on families, work with them. How can we reduce misuse of alcohol and identify individuals who have an escalation of misuse, and also treat people in the justice system as well. But that's
Okay.
all,
Okay. I think I can guess what Councillor Woodward might want to ask. Or
I don't know, but yeah, I want to say thank you to Leona for that report, and I'm worried that across the county, districts and boroughs don't get that level of information. But what worries me even more is that, you know, there are 8 districts and boroughs across the county, all very different, and it's all very well the Health and Wellbeing Board have these very noble strategic ambitions that Leona's outlined. But we need that information, not just at district level, because even within Lichfield district, the health issues in, say, Little Aston are very different from in, say, Kerborough or Chasetown. So it's at that sort of community level where, we as councillors pick up a lot of the issues and concerns that people have got about health services locally. That we need that sort of more granular detail, and it's very difficult to extract that when we don't have names of non-executive directors on the ICB and that sort of information. There ought to be really much easier ways in which the flow of information between, say, us as a district council overview and scrutiny committee can get direct access to the individuals who we need to lobby on behalf of the residents that we represent. But thank you for the information. At least we know that the information is out there, even if it's really very difficult to get any leverage to make those changes, significant changes, in terms of health services on the ground.
okay, you're right. That wasn't what I guessed you were going to ask. Okay. Just on the future work programme for the county, Monday the 27th, that's the primary care, dental and orthodontics, access to general practice and social prescribing. And then in March, it's mental health in schools, delivery of mental health strategy, and the end of life working group report, and then obesity and diabetes in April. Leona, I'm sure we're feeding back on that, but members can always look at the agenda and notes reports, which are very full in some places, on the county council's website. Oh, yes.
Yeah, can I just mention once again the mental health, particularly in schools, because it concerns me. I said last time it was really late on the agenda. If this goes ahead on the 3rd of March, how long will it take, would you imagine, before it actually gets into the schools? Because until we address this, the situation is getting worse and worse, and it's getting worse within the primary sector as well, which is very disturbing to think that we're getting lower and lower age range of people that children that have got mental health issues. So I do think it's important that we get ahead as quickly, or Staffordshire County Council gets ahead as quickly as possible, because it takes a while to get into the schools, and obviously they will miss the beginning of the new academic year in September if they don't get something on there sooner rather than later.
That back, yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Moving on to item 5 then, which is the notes from task groups. Literal City Centre, no, yeah, yes, you have. Literal City Centre Master Plan on the 3rd of October. I'll do that one first, if I may. Nobody want to talk about that, Colin, or anything, or just leave that as
I
it?
think it's, I have a comment to make on it. but
Please then, yes, please.
I'm happy to take any,
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
think it's fairly straightforward, but I'll take any questions if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, you want to talk to it?
Okay. Well, you'll note that it says here the proposals were discussed in significant detail and the majority of members of the task group generally agreed and were content with what had been proposed. That was with one exception. And unfortunately, in my view, and I'm a bit diffident about raising this because the person isn't here this evening.
Don't name them.
Well, I'm not naming them. So I'm a bit nervous about raising it, but that person then went to the press saying that they didn't agree with what the task group had suggested and there should be a rethink. And I'm concerned about that. I'll say more when we come to Leisure Centre Task Group as well, that if we have task groups and they come to a considered position, then we should respect that and not try and undermine it. Now, I'm less diffident because I've already addressed this directly to the person. And I've got a couple of witnesses tonight who saw me do that I was very angry that that had happened. So I just want that on record, that I think in future we need to be very careful. If we're having task groups and we agree something in a task group, then someone doesn't go away and try and undermine that afterwards.
I know in select committees you can have minority reports, so the select committee might, and Parliament can have a particular view, but then you'll get 2 or 3. I don't think it's ever one person on their own, but 2 or 3 might have a different view, but they want to express that. So I have a bit of a, I'm not sure about that sort of thing, but yeah, I mean, the idea of a task group is to have those arguments, not to have those, sorry, to investigate the issues and then come up with the recommendations or at least some sort of conclusions to the research, and also, make sure you can get those messages across to the cabinet and so on. I suppose outside of the task group, you can have a different view, but
my point, Chair, was that we as a task group had a very detailed discussion on the proposals. We accepted them and wanted them to go forward. And this other individual had a different view and then went to the press to express that view, which in my mind undermined the work of the task group, which had already given a view to the cabinet member to take things forward, and we expect that to be taken forward, and then it was attempted to be unpicked. That's the concern I've got.
I recognise the other member for Kerborough.
You did mention Parliament, so I should probably just draw people's attention. Register of interests.
That is?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, okay.
And I have to do these things.
I think Colin raises a really interesting point about the status of task groups and therefore the status of O&S. I mean, in many ways, we have to trust the judgment and the conscientiousness of people operating on task groups to give us appropriate feedback. And it's clear there that the majority of members of the task group agreed and were content with what was being proposed. I think if there is a minority view, then it's incumbent on the member or members expressing a minority view to act immediately and report their separate views to O&S. That seems to me to be the appropriate process. O&S delegates to a task group. The task group reports back to O&S a majority view, and if there is a minority view, then those holding that minority view can also report back to O&S, and then O&S can refer to cabinet for their decision-making process. But for the task group system and O&S to work properly, we've got to have trust in the members of each of the task groups to come up with the decisions that, you know, we can't all 47 members go into detail on. So I think it's an important point. And in view of the fact that we're reviewing the constitution now, from now on, very soon, that's something we need to sort of reinforce possibly in the constitution.
I can just say that there's been nothing wrong with the minority view of a scrutiny committee. That helps. That does happen because it's got quite a few members. The thing about task groups is you're only talking about 5, 6, 7 members. The idea is always to have a few members in a task group, and so a minority then becomes like, you know, it could be 20% of it. It's a bit odd, really. So, but I'll just make those points in defence of a different view from the task group. I think what Sue said about putting that minority view in it very early, which is, you know, they could be the right view. At the end of the day, task group eventually sees that that was the right thing to do, but
Not via the press necessarily.
that's something that's up to the individual, I think. Yeah. Right, yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, yeah, thank you.
I agree with Colin, and that really, after the task group have had their meeting, no one should go to the press until they go to the chair to get it cleared. Otherwise, we're going to have this going on all the time. I like that note because I don't normally agree with Colin.
Yeah, that's,
Is the issue the fact that they disagreed or the fact that they've gone to the press? Because, you know, surely disagreement is a healthy thing anyway, so that you promote discussion. And I thought that the job of the task force was to come back and report how they felt. And then the scrutiny committee decided based on the information that they got. That was my understanding.
So it should be.
Is the issue the fact that they went to the press?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
this is a different way of doing things, I think.
I'm
Yeah,
just
sorry.
put on from what Colin
I
said.
just found the fault was sitting here, by the way.
Well, so I'm not quite sure in terms of what happened, but I think there should be like some time. How long should be to respond if something has happened as well, for example, which we move on later on to the legislative task group. If someone is away, you shouldn't leave it for like over 3 weeks. There you decide I'll go to press, or like you decide, oh, I disagree. Actually, you know what? I disagree with that meeting. What happened? What was the result of that task group meeting? So I don't know if that happened there. But I think, you know, if we're waiting something for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, then they reply to you. I think that's too long because as a group, you've kind of summarised already to the officers. You told them what's going to happen, what we discuss, and that should be fair to everyone. Summary the outcome of the task group before they decide, that member decides to change their mind, or whoever decides to change their mind.
Thank you. If I move on then to the other task group, which is one that Leona chairs, which is the back again, the Leisure Centre, new Leisure Centre task group. Do you want to talk on this?
Yes, I'll just give a
You've got the notes here for the 21st of August.
Yes, I'll just give a recap as well of
Yes,
beforehand. So it's because it's quite a few months away from time. So before we in our task group we talked about costing. I think costing was quite, you know, it is a lot of money which we're spending on new leisure centre. So costing was item which was raised, and then members talked about value engineering, which officers and the cabinet members did listen to and looked at value engineering, so which would bring costs down. And then we also asked for update on progress as well. So value engineering, that happened from over the springtime, you know, August, and which we were given items to look at to see if what was a good idea, should we go ahead with those or not. So items such as professional fees, constructions, fixings. If I just be more accurate in terms of what we're looking at, like play areas, PA system, floor boxes, water, you know, water heating, you know, electric, or the mixed use of that, and also planning. You know, those are areas which we could save, but of course there are risks we're looking at, such as, you know, if we're looking at adjusting the height of the ceiling, that means planning. If we're looking at going over the budget, again, that will be delay the project, you know, help as well. So on this meeting here, we decided, you know, play area, floor boxes, you know, professional fees which are cut down, those are really good ideas. Play area, we do need those items. Floor boxes, the gym will need these items as well, not to cut off. Again, building structure wise, that has been agreed. If we change it in any way, the elevation of heights, again, that's planning. And so we need something durable also for long term as well. So following from that meeting, the item which was mentioned was in regards to the water heating side. Was it, you know, So this was going back to the mixed use, which is electric and gas, the combi system. And we raised, let's have a look at the electric system as well. We look at that, we can see, what's the alternatives and calculate the costings, whether it is capital, whether we're looking at replacement, mixed use, or to run, what's efficient in the long term and also at the present time as well. So that was a briefing note which came in September, following on which everyone has seen as well.
Okay, again. On the areas discussed there, it said the task group wished to avoid any changes that would increase costs and cause delays. And the original meeting of the task group was also about being within budget, as I recall it at the time. And in the outcomes here, the further work required, officers will provide a briefing note to confirm additional details on the cost of reintroducing the original heating plan and whether the all-electric option would be deliverable within the budget. So I do have that here, and I'm happy for members to discuss that information in there. But if we can try and keep it at high level, not too much detail, insofar as we'll have to go into part 2. And then it was confirmed construction would begin in September 2024, which it has. So if we just be careful with the questions, but I'll try and stop you if you go into awkward territory. Thank you, Sue. Sorry.
The best chair. In a sense, this relates to the previous discussion about the outcome of the task group's deliberations, and I was conscious of the fact that the task group said that they wanted more information, and a briefing note was sent out in September. It was very, very difficult for me to get a sight of that briefing note or sight of the original reports, to the point that I had to ask of the chief executive, am I entitled to see these reports? And he said, yes, you are. You're the opposition leader, so you are entitled to see them. So I don't think it was, if you like, handled in the most transparent and inclusive way. I think, if members want some information and are asking genuinely for information that they appreciate is confidential and will retain that confidentiality, then, it shouldn't take 2-3 months to get that information. Having said that, though, the task group, it says there that they were happy that no other value engineering elements would need to be implemented, so they accepted the package, if you like, of value engineering proposals. And it says subject to a reversion to the original heating system sufficiently covering the costs required to stay within budget. The task group confirmed they were happy no other VE elements would need to be implemented. So the task group seemed to be entirely happy. Leona can perhaps confirm or otherwise. The task group seemed to be entirely happy with the steer that they'd given going forward. Members will have seen that next week's full council agenda has now been published, and there's a motion that relates to this. And some of the information I've had through the confidential briefings doesn't quite fit with what the motion's saying. I'll leave it at that. But again, to me, this is about the status of the work of a task group and the process through which it goes to report to overview and scrutiny and to cabinet.
Well, the task groups report to this committee, and then sometimes they give, I say delegated authority, but they're sort of, if there's a shortage of time, a task group can't report to cabinet in that way, but not part of the constitution, just for time efforts. But really, the scrutiny committee is the one that looks at these things. Task groups are given a task to do. It's what's called task groups, reporting back to us, and then we pass that on. There's a whole committee giving views to the cabinet. That's how task groups should be working. Miles, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to check what discussion there has been since the briefing note, because I think there hasn't been a meeting of task groups since then. Is that understanding? So obviously there's been a request from my reading of the notes. The group agreed to request a briefing, and then one has been circulated, but there hasn't been discussion since then. Is that right?
I'll just answer the other. So there hasn't been any discussions because our views basically we give you, so how to, just explain, just correct me if I'm wrong, how task groups are, we discuss, we make recommendations, and then at the end, they make the final decisions. So the combi has that one, if it's related to that, that has been confirmed already from their side.
The reason I ask is there's, picking up on Sue's point, that the group was entirely happy. Well, it says that subject to reversion to the original heating system, saying subject to that point, which we've asked for a briefing note on, the group is content.
So just to reply back on that, only one person had replied on that, but that was at the end. So how the briefing note, as you can see the date on there, when I had a reply from that person who expressed, they wanted to achieve excellent. Of course, there, as I'm sure you've seen in paperwork, there is costs related to that as well. There is a massive cost related to that. No one else mentioned anything at all. And when in the meeting in August, have a saving of over 300k. That was a lot. That is a lot of money, which everyone was happy that we would save that money. Use heating system. Well, that's in the task group. It was mentioned that you are welcome to have a briefing note or further information if we were to revert back to electric. And Chair, may I also reply back to Sue's comments beforehand as well? In regards to confidential, I did ask straight away. So when I saw your email along with Collins, I did ask the officers, am I allowed to share it? But they told me because it's in negotiations and contracts, I was to hold on. So I was only following what was being advised that I was to hold on. But it's something I think we should bear in future as well. At the same time.
Can I just respond to that? I completely accept that Leona was possibly misadvised about the access that councillors should have to information, and I appreciate that, but it did cause, a sort of a gap. And in terms of the process and in terms of transparency and accountability of this council, first of all to its members and thereby to the residents out there, there should be that easier flow of information, I think, and perhaps it's a lesson learned for the future.
And then I think from your emails, we did chase, officers and also other private members, like, can we release that? And once that's all confirmed, then that's when it all comes through, because I think there's so much negotiation and people involved in the process as well.
Yeah, is that point?
Definitely to note in future, I absolutely agree on that.
Yeah, that point of principle, Chair, if I just may respond, the point of principle that it's about access to information, and if we badge ourselves the transparent council and accountable council, then members have got to be trusted to receive confidential information and treat it with confidentiality. That's part of the code of conduct and what we all sign up to. But if members can't get that information, then how are we supposed to be accountable to the people that we represent? So I think there's some issues, some tweaks that are perhaps needed. I'm looking to the leader to see whether he's picking this up. Some tweaks that are needed when the constitution's reviewed.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing of that task group, that it was very short notice. It was on there on.
That was the one.
One before, was it?
Yeah, and I think there's many of us who wrote it. Yeah. So this was during springtime. I was definitely not happy with that, because during that time I just had a child. Yeah. So for me to get that information, I think I was really stressed out about that. And I did, I think there's other people who are saying, so that meeting later on I think it was in June, that was cancelled, and that was when we got the information in August, that's when it proceeded afterwards. Just to say that I did chase on that straight away, because we have a newborn.
Colin wanted to come in, and then Jamie, please. Yeah. Colin.
Yeah, I'm sorry to come back on this again, but I guess I wonder whether I should be declaring an interest, because this is in my ward, as it is in Councillor Robertson MP's ward as well. And I really wanted to go ahead. I've got a concern again about this issue of task group coming to consider view and then someone else trying to undermine that view, which is what Councillor Wood be mentioning. But because my reading of the notes is perhaps slightly different from Councillor Trent's, because at the bottom of page 23, the task group wished to avoid any changes that would increase costs and cause delays. That seems pretty clear. And then subject to reversion to the original heating system, covering the costs required to stay within budget. So again, had to stay within budget, the task group confirmed were happy that no other elements needed to be implemented. And again, that confirms a considered view. And for someone afterwards to try and undermine that by putting a motion to full council, I think is regrettable.
Jamie, please.
Mine's in relation to the task group itself. I'm fairly new to scrutiny, so I've missed some of the previous ones, may have been covered. In relation to the construction of the AstroTurf pitch, I still think it's a shame it's not a full-size pitch, but have there been any discussions about its actual construction, insofar as the ones with the small rubber balls were initially considered to be cancerous. That's been discounted, but there's a lot of concerns over biodiversity issues and it break down in the water. So do we know which particular surface we're using? Is that something that came to task group in the first place?
Just know that there is a pitch.
Sorry?
No, there is a pitch.
It's just described as 3G pitch. If I ask someone to come back to me on that. Lovely.
I know exactly what you mean. So yeah. Okay, we've had those notes. We've heard the discussion. I'll have to move on to the next item then, please, which is item 6, the Lichfield District 2050 strategy. So we just endorse that and move on, or I'm happy if somebody wants to speak to it to start with. And then Miles, beg your pardon.
I think you were going to come back to the new health task group and
Yeah, I realise my paper's a bit for the work programme, so if that's okay, I'll do it for then. Is that all right?
yeah, of course.
I wasn't too sure, but yeah. Sorry, does anybody want to speak on this? We just slag it off.
She can do two things.
Just a minute, what the witnesses are saying. The recommendations are to note and comment on the Q2 year 1 delivery plan outlined in the Lichfield District 2050 strategy. And of course, you've got quite a lot of detail in Appendix A and Appendix B, APIs. And then secondly, to note the changes to delivery plan actions as set out in paragraphs 313 and 314. So everyone wants to particularly note. But yeah, so leader or
Jamie, if I could introduce you, yeah, thank you. I think the key thing for me on this is to your point, Councillor Woodward, about being open and transparent. We've not only brought the goals here, but the KPIs as well, which go down to quite a granular level of detail. There's quite a bit of internal discussion about whether or not we wanted to share those KPIs in public
now.
And the viewpoint almost unanimously was actually get them out there and get them shared. There's some things in there which do make uncomfortable reading, quite frankly. A 2-hour wait time on the phone call immediately drew my attention, for instance.
You're ringing in.
That was me. They knew it was me.
I've got your number.
Caller ID indeed. But actually, I think if we do want to be as transparent as we possibly can, then it's important for us to share those on a regular basis, and be really frank about where we're at. And actually, as you start digging around in those numbers, you actually realise that some of the stats, which on the face of it look quite challenging, actually there's stories underneath each of those which are about our staff doing quite incredible things under quite a lot of pressure. So yeah, look, it's about us being open, it's about us sharing the details. You'll notice, of course, that the report does only take us through to September. And so the purpose of one of the appendices is to bring you up to date with the items which are tracking away, just to give the committee some assurance made on that. We will get to a point in the future where we're able to report a bit more speedily, but that is a work in progress. But I think, yeah, for me, this is about us being open, being transparent, giving you all the details about a wide range of work across the organisation. Carrie, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that, Simon.
No, as the leader said, it gives an update both on how we're performing against the Lichfield District 2050 strategy and our year 1 delivery plan, and also a set of corporate KPIs that leadership team have pulled together and obviously got the agreement of the leader in terms of the key kind of corporate internal indicators that we want to focus attention on. To give a bit of balance, as a leadership team, we have set challenging targets on those corporate KPIs to kind of reflect the type of council that we are. We are ambitious, and we do want to strive to deliver the very best that we can for our residents and businesses.
Yeah, if I could just add as well, a big thank you to Lucy and Paul for the work they've done on pulling all this together. And it's I do think it's a brilliant report, which has lots of detail around services. Thank you to both of them. And if you ask us any really difficult questions, they'll be coming up to answer them.
Just go on awkward question early on, really, which is in 3.3 and the second bullet point. Enable Lichfield, Burwood and our villages to flourish, you see. Lichfield, Burwood and the villages, that's copyright for parliamentary candidates, you know. Parliamentary candidates, not just right, well, happy to have questions, and hopefully they're happy to answer the question, but I'd like to go through it section by section rather than have to go back and forth. So you've got the background there, section 3. I'll read the numbers out, page numbers in case they match yours. Page 24, and of course you've got the on track, warning, off track, interesting terms. These I've seen these. Well, I don't recall seeing these before. On track, warning, off track, completed.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to have the same grumble I had at the last overview and scrutiny meeting in relation to the display of percentages with no numbers next to them. It tells you a little bit of a story, but doesn't tell the whole story. For instance, I like the way it was put together, the on track and those that have been delivered will put in the 89%. But if you break it down, 4% are completed. So it's a good way of massaging the actual figure. I know it's all still there and it's an excellent report, don't you? I just find percentages very misleading.
We're giving the absolute numbers as well, isn't it? We've given the numbers as well.
You have later on. You have later on, and if I can raise the same,
only 10% of people notice that. Then.
Me then, right? Just on the same argument to bring it up now. KPIs for planning, once again presented in percentages, without it saying what the number is. If 75% have been reached, and we only had 4.
Yeah, on the side.
But if we've missed on 25 because there are 100 applications, then it's a very, very different figure. So I'm just trying to emphasise the importance of putting the numbers next to the percentages. Just
context is important, isn't it?
The context to those percentages.
That's something that you could look at.
Chair, if there are any items in there where we haven't given the absolute number as well as the percentage, then we absolutely should rectify that. I think we have, well, as far as I can see, we've given the absolute numbers as well as the percentages.
You have if someone is scrutinising every page.
Well, it's a good job we're at the scrutiny committee, isn't it, Councillor Sheffield? I think we do assume that members will read the document pack and not the summary.
Average was 3 minutes, not necessarily 2 hours.
Carry, please. Yes.
So absolutely on corporate key performance indicator, appendix B, in places we have included some more context figures, but I take the point that we could look to include more of that. I suppose we were trying to get that balance as to how much is too much information. So that's really helpful feedback that we can take forward.
The one I missed was the calls received. Sorry. Is it down by 1 or 6,000?
Right, okay. That one out.
John, you wanted a question on this section, hopefully.
No, it's been asked already.
Oh, right, okay, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Robertson, he's on my list. Yeah, give me a second. Is it this section? Thank you. While you're eating, look, I'll just draw attention to the dashboard, the environmental digital dashboard. Yeah, well, I'll finish my sentence. Draw attention to the environmental digital dashboard there on the 4th bullet point, 3.9 there, which is on the website. They're not quite as easy as some things to find, but it is there, and just draw attention to that. I'd got Dave there, and you said your question had been asked, so you've had it for now. Dave.
So I've got a few that relate to the background in total. Do you want me to bundle them up together or go one at a time, Chair?
Right.
So a couple that relate to the background. Do you want me to bundle them up or go one at a time?
No, bundle them up. That's okay. Yeah.
So the first one is paragraph 13, 3.13. the action, the top one of that table there, where it talks about implementing a new approach to major developments to agree more section 106s up front. That is very, very, very close to the top of the inbox for every single councillor in this council, because we know it is one of the significant things that people raise with us, is that they want to see infrastructure alongside that. The narrative around this suggests that this has been delayed due to other priorities. Seems to be quite a significant political failing. So I wonder if you could talk us through that. And then similarly, the point underneath it, which is engaging with stakeholders to develop that Burntwood master plan or Burntwood blueprint or whatever we're calling it. Again, that one seems to be another one that's delayed. And whilst that doesn't necessarily affect my ward specifically, I know it is, again, one of the major political priorities for people across the district. And it seems that I'm struggling to find many more that are of such significant political importance, and they seem to be the two that have been delayed. So I just wonder whether there was a comment on that. And the last one on this section relates to paragraph 15. The second one of those about the proposed action description changes. That's a significant change, and I think originally the original plan there had been to work with partner organisations like housing associations, because as we are well aware, actually, the majority, or a significant minority, I should say, of the carbon emissions in the country come from buildings and come from heating around that, and actually potentially working alongside those partner organisations like housing associations is a real avenue to decreasing that carbon footprint, and it seems to be taken out with the new wording. So I wondered if you're able to comment on those three.
Sure. If we take them one by one, I'll answer it, and then if Kerry or indeed Lucy or Paul want to add any detail, then they can do. I think in terms of the Section 106 agreements, residents do want to see infrastructure first, and quite rightly want to see infrastructure first. I think fixing the Section 106 agreements is not, whilst it's there to improve the infrastructure, it's not going to guarantee that infrastructure there is first. It means getting the 106 agreements in place up front, not getting the infrastructure there up front. This is it's a legal challenge that we've got, making sure that our processes are tighter and that we're actually able to get agreement at the right point in the process. So I think the concerns residents rightly have aren't immediately addressed by this issue here. What it does do is actually enable us to get a far better deal for residents in terms of the infrastructure they see. It doesn't guarantee that the infrastructure is going to be there up front. So I think they're two slightly different issues on that. And in terms of the political priority, absolutely infrastructure first is one of our key priorities, but this won't achieve that. And there are multiple things with planning that are at the top of my inbox that need addressing prior to the legal agreements with 106. Kerry, don't know if you want to add to that.
I would just add to that as well. There's a bit of sequencing in terms of the transformation work we're doing around planning and major development. So yeah, I think some of the wording perhaps isn't particularly helpful in that update. So we've been focused on trying to get the pre-app process better and improved around major developments, because in reality, if we have a better relationship with developers up front, then we can work differently with them to get a better Section 106 and the best deal possible for our district in terms of infrastructure. So the focus has been on, for the first part, let's get that pre-app process right. Let's get that offering right. Let's work with our major developers to convince them of the merits of working with us on a pre-app. And then the work that the planning team have been doing with our legal advisors about getting a better Section 106 template developed. And that development work has happened in terms of that Section 106 template. And we're now at the point where we're engaging with a cabinet member around it and looking to roll it out.
I'm just interested to say that there's evidence of that, isn't it? Working with developers beforehand, trying to get that relationship, there's evidence of that. Okay. Do you want to come back on this?
Yeah, I thank you both for the responses there. And I think, I mean, my reading of that with the wording that's in there was very clear on that. So if it is a case of that needs to be a reword, and I know it's too late because paper's gone out to count. I think potentially it's possibly something to look at in the future, because if it's a case of prioritising other work to enable this work to happen, I think that needs to be kind of more captured. in relation to Councillor Pullen's point, if it's talking about getting a better Section 106 deal, then that is the infrastructure that people want to see. So I think and make sure this doesn't slip from the top of the pile.
Okay, I'll give John another go now. If you want to have your another question, was it, or a different question?
Should we answer councillor?
A few more questions.
Bring him. I want to bring John in to break it up.
Too late. Too late.
Right, okay. They've got to stay after the queue in the queue. But Dave next. Three questions, but I couldn't find paragraph 15. Of course, the 3.15. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Why don't you say so then? Delivery plan. Come on then.
So the next question was about Burnwood. The Burnwood. You've heard of it. I don't know how candid I can be on this, but I'll be really candid. There was a plan for a Burnwood master plan. A tender had gone out for some consultants to work with us on creating a master plan for Burnwood. I was not particularly enamoured with the proposed consultancy work on any level. I think it's very easy for us to spend tens of thousands of pounds with consultants and not move anything anywhere further forward. So we put an end. We changed and improved that tendering process, shall we say, and made that a longer term view, and reshuffled some of that funding to say, well, actually, there's a whole load of things we can do in the short term in Burnwood to make it better. We can get out there and we can weed the high street and paint the planters and just do a whole load of short term things which will improve the high street, ahead of thinking more carefully about what we actually want to see in terms of that master plan. Everyone around this table will know we can very, very easily spend tens of thousands of pounds and end up with a consultancy report which then sits there in our inboxes or on the desk for another 5 years and doesn't make a lot of difference to residents or the high street. So very keen to avoid that. But it is still one of our priorities. We're just going about it in a slightly different way than it's been in a few months ago. Is there anything else you wanted to answer that? And then the final question, help me on this, Councillor Dave Robertson MP.
You're not going to quit with that, man.
Just remind me. Just remind me of the question. So this was about was this about the district-wide climate event?
No. So next one down, action off track. Change to action description proposed.
I'm looking entirely.
No, sorry, one above. Work with partners, residents, businesses, and community groups to develop our district-wide climate strategy. That's a lot weaker than what was originally in there.
Oh, I don't know what papers I'm looking at. Sorry, forgive me.
Wait, what paragraph are you, Dave? You
315 in
Oh,
there.
right, sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Very end section.
Got it. Sorry, struggling to read.
Potentially, we're reporting this, and again, can I suggest some formatting changes to this area?
So I think what this is really saying is rather than us delivering a climate event at the cathedral and thinking that that's going to answer all of our problems, actually really recognising where the power is in changing this, and that power, frankly, is with our partners, it is with our residents, it is with businesses, community groups, etc. And it is, in my view, actually strengthens our ability to do that, rather than believing that the district council holds all of the keys to that. We've absolutely got to work right across that. The event in and of itself, whilst helpful, doesn't necessarily bring us closer to that goal.
Can I just say something on this, which is, by the way, 3.14 in my pages, which is that, yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time, big event and that drawn attention, but the more you thought about it, the less it seemed to be, would be as effective as is proposed now, if you're going to schools and smaller groups and getting that message out. So less dramatic, okay, but that would be a one-day event. In fact, the original date was gazumped by some other event at the cathedral. So I think my personal view is that it does seem a lot better. But Dave, please come back. I've got other people on the list. So don't worry, I've forgotten you all.
And so just on the narrative next to this, it literally states that the aim will be to complement our recycling campaign, raise awareness of environmental issues, and encourage children and their families to adopt sustainable behaviours at home. That's quite a long way short of working with partners and business groups and community groups.
Well, it's just part of it.
One
isn't it?
single provider in some-
Yeah.
So the bit on the left, if you're looking at these papers, seems really strong and seems like something we should be looking into. The one on the right seems to be tell kids to recycle more.
Well, go on, yeah.
So, like I say, the work with schools is just part of the approach. So that's some work that we're cabinet members really keen, because as we all know, it's our kids that guilt us into recycling more, turning lights off, etc. That isn't the only work that we are proposing to undertake as part of developing a district-wide climate strategy, but it's a key priority that the cabinet member wants us to take forward in the next couple of quarters.
I'll just say that when the it was done with the pilot scheme or experimental with the at Burntwood Library, this the child that happened to be in the library took over basically. It did a very good job. I've got just let you know the speakers I've got at the moment, which is Sue, Miles, and Di, using just first names. So I'll go through those, and Colin, obviously. If I can go to those and then come back to, I think they've got some more. I'll go through. Is this to do with this section? So thank you. Yes, please.
First of all, can I say I remember the interminable lists of KPIs and graphs and charts that we used to get under the Audit Commission, I think it was, and this was much more transparent and easy to understand. And when we adopted the strategy 2050, you know, there were concerns that it was perhaps too high level, wouldn't make the changes on the ground, but this is sort of warts and all. So I commend all of the officers and members who've brought this forward. But Doug, you know, there's plenty that are on track, but I'm not going to look at those. You wouldn't expect me to. And interestingly, I've also focused on that section that Dave has from 3.13 onwards, the section set to warning. So I won't repeat what Dave said, but under 3.14, actions set to off track, and this is about the Greenway. This take it or leave it lease agreement. I'm not sure what the detail is on that, and I know a report comes to cabinet tomorrow, isn't it? So, but that's sort of slightly worrying that we're not in control of our own destiny, really, in any sense, in terms of the Greenway. And as the leader knows, I've been interested in this for a very long time and want to see that progress as quickly as possible. Work with the CAB, the cases, the Citizens Advice Bureau, and I'm conscious of the fact that 2 members have declared an interest. To deliver a joined up advice and signposting service, isn't that the core business of Citizens Advice Bureau? So I don't quite understand delay on that, and it may not be possible to explain the delays now. Because of discussions that are ongoing with cases, but that is a real concern, because that's a really important issue for the residents that we represent. You know, if they want advice from CAB cases, that needs to happen as soon as possible. It's no good sort of saying, well, we can wait until the next quarter. So just expressing a concern about that. The EV strategy, working with the County Council to support, where appropriate, the delivery of the county-wide EV strategy. Well, it seems to me that we as a district will know far more, in far more localised a manner, that delivery of EV charging points, we're more likely to know where they're appropriate than the County Council. From their distance to us. The climate event Dave's already mentioned, but also the action off track that's under 3.15, improved inspection rates for private rental complaints and increasing housing enforcement inspections. Again, this is such a major issue, and I know it's subject to some of the budget discussions that we're intending and hoping soon to have with Councillor Strachan on what goes into next year's MTFS. But I know Colin has particularly worked hard on this. Many of our residents live in private rented accommodation, which is inadequate. So it's disappointing really to see that that's sort of off track at the moment, but I mean, they're my comments really. I don't expect detailed answers now, but if you would like to, if Kerry or Doug would like to comment on those, that would be welcome.
Entirely voluntary, this.
Yeah, I would not dare to not respond to Councillor Woodward. I think the going through them in order, then the Greenway between Lichfield and Brownhills. The Network Rail have issued a lease agreement which is standard off the shelf. It's the lease agreement that they provide to anybody who wants to lease track from them, and they won't depart from that lease agreement. So actually the challenge that we've had is not about trying to negotiate the lease per se, but actually to understand what are the risks that are associated with taking that lease on, and understanding what we can do to mitigate some of those risks, what we can do to insure against some of those risks, and what we can do to shift that risk to other organisations / partners. Anthony Thomas has done some pretty diligent work over the last few months on that. I suppose the reason it's flagging on here is because we knew it was a take it or leave it lease several months ago. It's just taking a lot longer to work through the risk mitigation than perhaps we'd originally envisaged. As you said earlier on, the paper came into Cabinet tomorrow to discuss that, about whether we to continue with that work. So it really is just about the length of time it's taken us to understand those risks and ensure sufficient mitigation is in place before we enter that agreement. Don't know, Kerry, if there's anything that you wanted to add to that.
No, I'd say a lot of hard work's been going on behind the scenes in terms of identifying those risks and working to quantify them. We're working closely with our insurers on it. So as officers, we are confident we will still get there, but it has taken much longer than we anticipated because of that lack of flexibility really from Network Rail.
My only comment back would be to say, I hope that we're not intending to shift risk to another organisation. I'm conscious of Battle Track and the sterling work that they're doing is, very, very welcome. If the district council, this is a district council project in the end, and I wouldn't like the idea that we're offloading risks to the council to other organisations. Just say that now, depending on what happens in the future.
It was a bad choice of words by me, but I think some of the mitigation work can be undertaken by Battle Track. They're undertaking a vast amount of the mitigation work naturally in terms of what they're doing. The good news is that by the time we do get to sign the lease, most of the clearance work will have been done. The next question was around cases, and so I think perhaps some better phrasing here in cold light of day would be that the joined up advice and signposting service is absolutely what cases provide, and have provided for many years and will continue to provide. That I think the commentary here is around joined up between Lichfield District Council and cases, not just by themselves. So you'll know, of course, that cases moved out of Levettsfield, which was a Lichfield District Council property several months ago, and have taken up space within Lane. This is really about how do we work more closely for experience for their customers as well as ours. That's hit a few bumps in the road, but agree that we're going to move it to the year 2 delivery plan, and have got every confidence that we are to deliver against the coming year. Again, sorry. Now Kerry can give you the real answer.
And just to provide some reassurance to the committee, we do refer between us really well, and again that process has improved massively since cases have moved into the building. So that referral process is now much smoother, much quicker between the two organisations. What we were wanting to explore, and we have been exploring with cases, is a more integrated approach. So looking at how we can better share customer data between the two of us. We're also looking at opportunities for cases staff to potentially be on our reception as well, to offer a more holistic service to people coming into District Council House. So we were trying to be quite ambitious in a much more integrated. Those conversations are still ongoing, but yes, it's going to, I think, require a bit more time to get into the detail of some of those and the finances of some of those ambitions as well.
I think quickly, perhaps just to wrap up on the final two, the county council and the EV strategy. This has been knocking around for so many years about the district council's involvement in the EV strategy, and I think once you actually start peeling the layers away, you realise that actually the levers are all held by the county council. Things like on-street charging, for instance, we just don't have any of the levers that we can use to actually enable that. Once you start looking at some of the strategic requirements, i.e. substations, etc., actually it's just out of our hands. So whilst we might do know best about where that's placed, actually the infrastructure that sits underneath that sits with another organisation. So it's really just about how can we influence that to ensure that it meets our needs, accepting the fact that actually to deliver that by ourselves is perhaps out of our reach. And then on the final point there about the private rental inspections, entirely agree. There's no justification. The narrative is there about we had an early retirement, but I think frankly we do need to up our game in that regard and carry out more inspections. That's quite right what our residents would expect us.
Thank you. Can I just
Oh, sorry, I think Kerry wanted to probably correct me.
And just to add, as the narrative says, we'd started this year with extra officer ready, so we were really optimistic that we'd be able to hit that target. And unfortunately, we did have a unexpected retirement. It's been really challenging to recruit. So again, we have thought differently and bringing in some part-time resource because again, we as officers see the impact that poor housing conditions have. We see it in terms of people coming through the door to our customer services, through the cost of living sessions, as well as to our housing team as well. We see the impacts. So we too as officers are really keen to get moving on that as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you. I'll bring Councillor Miles Trent in next, but I just want to say that I'm on track now. That's to say, instead of my draft reports where all the numbers are slightly changed, I've happened to notice on the highlights of on-track KPIs, in the draft there was only 6 bullet points, now there's 9. So if I had a meeting a week later than this, then who knows where we'd be percentage-wise, 24%. Anyway, Miles Trent.
50% extra.
Pick up on the discussion we've had about reworded actions. Others have commented on 3.15, and it links to the risk register at the end of the report. There's an item C where it says action amendments or extensions mask poor performance. I wouldn't say it's masking poor performance. Would you think there's a risk that if you reword actions to such an extent that you are essentially creating a whole new action? Because I agree with what Dave was saying, that what's now proposed on the climate summit does seem quite significantly different, and it may be very good, it may even be better, but it is a different action now. So if you're trying to measure over time and look back which has been ticked off and which was achieved and which what, there is a risk there. I think that it's a misleading impression because you've reworded it and you're now doing something different. So I don't know whether you would sort of on that.
I think for me, and as you picked up in that risk description, it's about accountability. So I'm absolutely happy if a cabinet member wants to sign off on a change of action, as long as it's attempting to meet the same goal. If they want to sign off on a change of action, perhaps they don't feel that, for instance, the climate summit is the best way of achieving that goal and want to do it in a different way, then absolutely change it, put their name to it, say they've changed it, report to ONS on the fact they've changed it, and justify that and explain how it helps to achieve the same goal, but in perhaps a slightly different way. So fully agree. I think as long as it's being done in an entirely transparent and accountable way, I don't think we should be shameful from that. As long as we can say be really transparent about it and report back on it.
I know it's getting scrutiny now, so there is accountability, but it's just having that audit trail of what I think I would prefer to see. We explored that action. Don't now agree that it needs to be done. That's ended. Here's our new action on the same area. Hopefully that's not too semantic.
Yeah, no, at all. I entirely agree. And I'm glad that we put that risk in there to highlight for everybody.
Yeah, and Councillor Di Evans was next.
Yeah, I wanted to go back on to what David said earlier about the climate event. We all know that all schools are at the moment interested and pushing children towards all the things to do with climate. And children actually are better at educating their parents than the other way round as far as this issue goes. But when you've said schools, I assume you mean all schools, primary as well as secondary, and whatever programme is there will be suitable for all age ranges. And as well as that, what has concerned me at times, if you look on Facebook and various other social media things, is the negativity of some people and the attitude to anything to do with climate change. Obviously, this is the adults. So how is that going to be addressed in order to educate people, particularly with other things coming on board? We're going to have the food waste, we've already got all the other bins. And it concerns me that people are not taking the interest that they should be taking and how important this is. So I wanted to ask about that one. And I was going to ask about recruitment as well, because I noticed that it's very difficult to actually recruit people to these tasks, but it is important. So how are we going to, how long we got this part-time person for? Is that until you find somebody, or is it going to be, are they only on a length of time contract? Because again, as has been said, plenty has been said about the fact that these issues, housing issues, are really vitally important, because there are some people living in incredibly substandard accommodation, which should never happen anywhere in this country.
Right. Like, Chair, if the request is to stop people making negative comments on Facebook, I don't think we'd want to set ourselves that as one of our KPIs, unfortunately. But I think
get behind that one.
but I think you're right. So the toolkit that's taken out to schools is primarily aimed at primary age primary school kids. So yes, it will work for senior schools as well, but it really is about that sort of 5 to 12 type age group that those kids really want to learn about that sort of, you know, thing at that age. So that's where the toolkit is primarily aimed at. And I think in terms of, you know, the wider public, I think it's on us to provide simple ways of people helping out and doing the right thing. I think we also need to go about it in a measured, pragmatic way. We can't just say, this is what you've got to do, wag our fingers at people and tell people they must do this better and they must do that, because that doesn't resonate well with people. So I suppose it is really having a proper strategy in place to help people do the things which benefit the environment and do it in a sensible, pragmatic way. In terms of the recruitment, Kerry's got more detail on that.
So yes, we have been creative. We've actually gone out and found this person. It's someone with experience in the field. They're not quite keen for a permanent contract. So again, we've worked with them to go, okay, well, how can we get you in what way? So part-time and a casual contract has meant we've been able to bring that resource in. Always looking at the most, you know, creative solutions possible around recruitment. We've got our talent acquisition service that actually again goes out and finds talent. We don't just put an advert out and wait for people to stumble across it. So we on a proactive basis are targeting via LinkedIn and searching for people with the right qualifications and making approaches to them. We've also, especially in this part of the business, been really done really well with apprentices. So and bringing in environmental health apprentices. I think we had over 80 applicants for an environmental health apprenticeship, so much so that we were able to bring in a couple of, I think we took on 3 rather than 1 that we planned, because actually the quality of what came forward was just amazing. So again, we took the opportunity. So we are always thinking creatively in terms of how we can recruit. If we can't quite get permanent, can we at least get some high quality casual part-time while we look at other more permanent solutions?
That's Kerry living up to Creative County slogans there. Colin is the on this initial list and back
Yeah,
to
I'm afraid I'm going back to item 3.15 at the top of my document. Because I don't think part of my ward colleagues' question was answered. And I think
because I've got a paragraph says that nobody knows.
it's an important one, could make a significant difference. And that was about housing. With housing is a major contributor to increasing. And if all the housing associations changed their dwellings from gas central heating to heat pumps, that would make a big impact. Similarly, you know, the major issues within the district, we could in some of our facilities that we could do similar things. So I think, you know, and I don't object to the idea of a district-wide campaign involving younger people and encouraging everyone to play their part, and I certainly do personally. I think we all do, and we should do. But I think there are strategic issues like that that could make a big difference if we could engage with the partners like housing associations and encourage them to change their heating provisions, and we can make some changes to our own heating facilities, our own solar panels and all the rest of it. Lots of opportunities to make a big impact. So I just wonder whether that's something that's worth exploring in addition to that campaign.
Yeah, I think working with housing associations would always be beneficial to our residents. You know, we've got a mix of housing associations across the district, as I know you're fully aware, and we've got varying levels of engagement, shall we say, with each of those housing associations. But I would say at that point as well that you know, where we are retrofitting, whether that's heat pumps, whether that's solar panels, etc., there's got to be a really clear, not only benefit for the climate, but what we don't want to do is work with a housing association to install a whole load of heat pumps, and that cost then gets passed directly on to their tenants and bumps that up. So we've got to be really careful about, yes, we absolutely want to move towards reducing carbon emissions. What we don't want to do that is do it in such a speedy way that it adds on to the bills of tenants who frankly are already struggling now. So I don't disagree, but I think we've got to be very careful about how we do that and be conscious of the unintended consequences.
Okay, John, you want?
Yeah, I'm just thinking you can't get housing associations to deal with damp and mold and whatever else, the same with, you know, the cost and whatever. So to get them to install heat pumps, I cannot see that happening, to be honest. My question was going to be, and are there government initiatives that would perhaps reduce that cost for housing associations to put heat pumps in, rather than having to bear the costs entirely on their own, that maybe they could avail themselves of?
If there is any, I'm presuming they'll know about it.
So, just in relation to heat pumps, yes, the £7,500 grant for domestic heat pumps at the moment. They cost on average about 15,000. I've had 3 estimates, and it'll put my electricity bill up to about £1,000 a month. So unless you've got a fully insulated house, you're almost wasting your time having a heat pump. So I love the idea of the heat pump, because I'm looking for anything that cut down my costs, but it's not something that can go for a new builds. Great idea, as long as they're well insulated. The mold issue is a historic one going back a long time, down to the standard of build, unfortunately. While I'm speaking, I won't mention percentages. Just in relation to RAG status, which I believe stands for red, amber and green, and then we're going to use red, yellow and as
Yeah, right.
that sounds easier to say. It's just an observation from me.
Not really good. Yeah, I could. Well, my uncle had the best idea. Just made you wear more pullovers and things, and he's went to visit him. But anyway,
My uncle that had 40 sweaters in his bedroom because he didn't want the heating on. So depending on how cold it was how many sweaters he put on.
people have made a note of that.
I've got the sweaters now.
My meetings.
I have got to go to London.
Hey, did you want to come back on and the appendices and anything like that?
Yeah, I've got two in the appendices. If
Please.
so first one on page 43 of the documents, it actually relates to something that I had also spotted Councillor Pullen around the 2-hour phone call, which would have been pretty grim for that resident, but actually no less grim for the resident who was waiting an hour and a half the quarter afterwards. When you look at the narrative that goes alongside that on the right, and it talks about the length of call wait is a worst case scenario, not the norm that our customers experience, I wonder whether actually this is the correct reporting mechanism. If we're talking about we want the worst case scenario to be under 40 minutes, which is actually what this KPI means. I don't think you're measuring the right thing there. I think we need to be reporting the number of calls which are waiting for more than 40 minutes. Because actually dropping that from 2 hours to an hour and a half is still from really pants to just very pants. As I think obviously if we saw that drop from 15 to 2, that's a really significant improvement, and I think that's a much better way of measuring what we're trying to achieve there. I'm just wondering whether that one would be an appropriate KPI. And then page 55. Financial savings, cashable cumulative. The financial savings target was set at the time when inflation was nearer to the Bank of England target, when we were in a more stable economic environment. So I'm assuming these targets were set before August 2021, after which inflation increased to a level above where it's been roughly stable at around 3% since the summer, or that narrative is wrong.
Or we've been getting help from the House of Commons Library with these questions.
So the first point around are we measuring the right thing? I think we're going to see an improvement across all of these KPIs over the years coming. This is first set of KPIs, and I think if there's anything there that the committee think actually there's a slightly better way of measuring that, or a slightly different way, more than happy to take on any considerations on that. Yeah, more than happy with that. I think this is a first pass and believing iterative improvement rather than trying to get everything perfect on day one. On the second point, I can't find that item in my pack because I don't have the page numbers.
So it is Appendix C, page 3. It's a little where it says 55 of 86. That helps.
It doesn't on mine, but thank you. The yeah, go on, Anthony.
I was running out. Thank you for that.
So that original target was part of the procurement strategy that was approved by Cabinet in December 2020. So it does predate the significant increase in inflation that took place after that period.
Because it's hovering around at close to it's slightly above 2.3 this, so we are now back to the point where would we be expecting to see that number continue to rise from this point onwards?
So I think the CPI target, it can be a little bit misleading. So I'll give you an example. Take sort of ICT license contracts, they are still at around 10% at the moment, annual increases. So whilst headline inflation's down, there are particular parts of the economy that are still significantly higher than that. I think utility bills are still higher than that at this point in time as well. So yeah, it is proving to be difficult to get savings when a large part of our spend is in those types of area.
Can I suggest a rewording of this type of narrative for the future then? So rather than because this very much makes it look like the CPI is high when that's kind of not true anymore. It has been, completely understand that. But actually, if it's on specific items such as IT equipment, etc., then I think that's a very useful thing to be able to pick out, because again, it's on that transparency issue.
Yeah, look, if there's extra detail that would helps add colour to that, yeah, more than happy to add that in there.
Are there any more questions on this? I've got your name here. I've crossed you off, so it must be on the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. It's in the appendix, page 41, the KPI and equalities and talks about stage 1 complaints responded to within 20 days. You think, referring to from the narrative, it sounds like remain resolved, answered within 20 days. You seem to think, well, just an acknowledgement is responding to it. And the KPIs that followed, more complicated ones, we're told about keeping people up to date, essentially. I just wondered if you get any thought about defining it as both acknowledging, responding to, letting them know, and then final resolution at that point, just to really clarify which we're talking about.
I'll let Kerry take this one because, funnily enough, I'm not allowed near the complaints.
So yes. So yes, this KPI is responded to. We've investigated their complaint and gone back to them within the 20 working days response. That's a really good point that we and include again some more context to again provide reassurance. And I know the officers do this in terms of logging the complaints and making sure as soon as they arrive we acknowledge receipt of them. And we work very hard with our customer services team and managers to get over that point, that it's really important that we acknowledge receipt of complaints as soon as possible when they land, either as email or in a letter format.
I think both are really important and worth measuring, aren't they? There's communication, and there's actually resolving or giving them a proper answer, final answer.
Around the county with John Giffard as chief constable, same complaint was made year on year, which is that people report issues and the police never get back. I'm going back quite a bit now, and that is certainly an issue. So people just know that you're looking at it, even if you're taking a while or whatever. It doesn't matter. They'd like to know that you're looking at a particular issue, or in this case, a complaint. So that's good. Certainly, yeah. Thanks. I think that's it, really. I mean, there's some good ideas coming from members, none from me, I don't think, but from members of the committee that you made note of, and that. We can ask you further questions and we get the next report. Okay, thank you. I'll move on now then, thank you for that, to the social value guidance policy. And although it says recommendations there on the first page in what? Ooh. Ooh. Yeah. Right, I don't want to miss that. No.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
As I was saying, we've got a youth council item. And, the papers is it? Hi, Kerry. Right, yeah, Councillor Cox, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. So the Youth Council.
Just to let people know that he's dressed down from when he was chairing the Health Care and Overview Scrutiny Committee this morning. He's not explained why, but anyway, maybe to make him feel relaxed.
Far more relaxed.
That's it, okay. I'm not offended, by the way. Yeah.
So Youth Council, just to give a verbal update on as you requested it, Chair. Since our last meeting, we obviously took on board quite a bit of what was said. So we've obviously looking at going out there and seeing how we are with expand it to ensure that we've got inclusion. I'm afraid to say that the response we've had from schools has been zilch. Which it isn't encouraging, but not to say that we're defeated. I think there's a clear will to want to try and still pursue it, So really that's where we're at. So we're trying to re-engage and set ourselves an agenda in the sense of how to say reinvent the wheel, but it's getting that process up and running that we can look at. So it is unfortunate, but we are dealing with outside providers, and obviously, you know, do they see it as the most important? So we've got to obviously look at that and seeing how we're going forward. Kerry, I don't know whether.
Could you also just listen to how many schools?
Yeah.
That are involved in that?
So yeah, I've got a list of the schools.
What's the names? It was the
Sorry?
number. It wasn't much the names. It's the number of schools that contacted. Really, it would embarrass any schools in particular.
11.
11, right.
So originally it was we'd got 5 participated schools, and we've gone out to 11. And out of that, only 1 actually responded. So see where we're at.
Is this responding to just 1 invitation or 2 or 3 reminders or anything like that? How, you know,
Kerry, I'm going
Yes,
to ask
there's been a
you
couple
couple.
of approaches. But we'd also got feedback from some of the youth counsellors as well that communicating with the schools wasn't quite working. So you are reliant on very busy teachers who have got a lot on as it is, passing on messages as well. So it doesn't look like that line of communication is particularly working, even for those schools that were engaged. So what we have proposed to the cabinet member is we've set up a bit of an officer working group to look at how we can kind of refresh and revitalise the youth council. So what we're doing is got a team of officers from across the organisation. We're doing some desktop review work, so we're looking at good practice from local councils. So there are some very successful councils out there, so we're trying to get in touch with those councils to understand as well, you know, what kind of journey they went through to get it set up and get it really working. And we're also reaching out to other councils around different methods of engagement that they use with young people as well. It might be successful, looking at social media, but other technology platforms as well. So we're doing that desktop review piece. But what we're also quite keen to do is actually go out and do some face-to-face engagement with young people and schools and teachers to understand, again, what worked well or less well with the current setup and how they'd like to be engaged and involved moving forward. So that's the second strand of work that we'd like to do, to then bring forward some recommendations to the cabinet member about how we move forward.
could you remind me what the reason was for having a youth council? Somebody sounds good, ticks a box. I mean, I know that wasn't the case, but you know, what is the reason? What's the purpose of youth council? What's the word?
Well, for me, the purpose was that we would have an engagement with those that couldn't necessarily have a voice on a council. Obviously, means not allowed, obviously, to be in a position to be elected to district council or even parish council, and so on. And the objective there was, obviously, by creating it, we could also feed in topics of conversation in terms of, as we had done in various on climate change and recycling and so forth, that it brings in that opinion from young people. And obviously, you know, there were some very interesting debates that we had that even I fed through, because I was not at the time chair, but I certainly fed certain things through to the health and care scrutiny in terms of vapes and so forth. And we got an understanding of certainly those youngsters that were at that meeting had strong opinions with regards to vapes and the type of packaging that they come in and marketing thing and everything else. So it's feeding in those opinions that we can then address in terms of going forward.
Okay, well, so it doesn't have to be called a youth council, does it? And there may be, when you're looking at the best practice, they may not have youth councils, but they have a good way of actually getting input from young people. It may be online rather than in all those sort of, as long as you look, well, I'd like to think that I do that now as a council. We're looking at all different ways of doing that. That would be good. It'd be a good report to come back to us, because yeah, getting that input from young people, but how you do it, you've got to fit in with what they want to do it, really, haven't they? You know, so.
And I think that is that difficulty, is trying to fit it into the programme.
Yeah. Okay, I've got Miles, you and Miles, Sue, and then David first. Okay.
Thank you. You mentioned the communication with the schools not being ideal at the moment. Just wondered, is there any comment you'd have about the engagement of the pupils themselves that are involved in youth council, and what's been the kind of story over recent months on that, their level of engagement? The connected question to that is there anything that we as councillors could do to help with that, to help with their level of engagement? I know that when this came up at this committee last time, we were talking about can we be inviting them to watch committees like this?
Yeah, we got to that stage because of your issues. Yeah.
Wondered if and maybe even full council, and so if there is any kind of question mark over their engagement, making it as sort of meaningful as possible, and for them to feel they having a tangible input. And you've touched upon this with issues you've put to them at youth council, but making it as tangible as possible, I would think would help. But just want your reflections on that.
And that's another aspect that we're looking at, is how can we offer added value in terms of them being involved as well. So I'm looking this way because I know Georgia and Will are both on the working group. So looking at, like you say, can we offer training opportunities, or I think like we discussed last time at Scrutiny, you know, being youth council members here and full council and so forth. So helping them build their skills. Can we look at different incentives as well to again encourage engagement as well? So yeah, we're we are absolutely looking at all of the comments and feedback that Scrutiny gave last time, as well as kind of doing that desktop review on good practice.
They've got to get some feedback, haven't they? They've got to see, well, I've done this, what has been the results, you know? Yeah. Sue, and then David.
Yeah, I was quite shocked by Richard's comment that the response from schools had been zilch, but it just made me think, yeah, well, they're voting with their feet, aren't they? If the schools and the individuals themselves don't see this as a great deal of, value for the time input, the travelling to the district council and so on, then they're telling us, in effect, this isn't worth the time we're spending on it. The decision to set up a youth council was prior to May 2023, and I wasn't here, I wasn't part of that debate then. But I recall there were huge concerns raised about it being a bit tokenistic. I mean, there's nothing more energising than having a political debate or any sort of debate with young people. I used to be a sixth form tutor, and fond memories of that. But if we're not making it real for them, if we're not making it valuable for them, then we've just got to start again. I'm presuming that's what the Officer Working Group is doing, starting again. But why not just say, yeah, this has not worked in its current format, and we need to fundamentally review it and start again.
I think that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so.
They haven't actually said that. We're stopping the youth council in its current format and starting again. That would be an acknowledgement of the lack of engagement from schools and members at the moment.
I'll invite the cabinet member to.
What I would obviously like to see first is obviously what is coming out of the Officer Working Group, and then to evaluate exactly where we're at. So
is it continuing then in the meantime? Is it still
No.
meeting? Right,
No.
so in effect it's stopped.
Yeah.
And there's a working group reviewing it. So why not let's just say that we've stopped the youth council in its current format, and we're revising and coming up with some new ideas and suggestions.
I'll say that, absolutely, because that's exactly what we're at. Obviously, sorry, my phrasing wasn't.
Yeah, but we haven't
that.
been told
No,
that,
no.
you know, as far as members are concerned, the youth council continues, you know, and it happens sort of slightly off stage, and we're supposed to get reports back through the members newsletter, which, you know, I look for, but are never there, you know, but it would have been helpful to have been told that this is happening, just in the members newsletter, just as an update.
I guess we're clarification. When did you get the zilch response? How long ago was that?
So we re-engaged over the summer holidays.
Yeah,
and
re-engage is a better term.
yeah, September.
Sorry. September. Okay, right. Now, Councillor Trent has been the one that's raised this, and I wanted to make sure that we did have somebody along from the Youth Council here, if they could, either before or after the meeting or at the meeting, if they don't mind being on YouTube. And this is where it's come up. So that's why we've got members. Perhaps it should have been told that they've been looked at again, being reviewed at this. I think that's a fair point. So I'll just keep them informed. But we are where we are now, which is, I think, is the point is to try and be optimistic and see if there is a way of making it work, so we can get young people to actually have their views heard by us making the decisions, and them realising that we have listened to them and heard them. Right, but there we go. I've got Dave, Di, John, and Jamie, and then Colin. Just roll those names.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to come back to a point that I've made, I think, every single time we've discussed this, and I'm still not quite sure why we haven't done it. The schools that we engaged with when we were trying to kind of re-engage, I think was that. I'm guessing that was the 3 Lichfield Comprehensive, the 2 Burntwood Comprehensives, and the Cathedral School. Are there any more that we tried to engage with?
There were. I mean, I've got the list if you want me to quote it.
Well, because one of my real concerns is actually there's a lot of school planning districts in Lichfield District. So your own ward, Councillor Cox, no pupils or no children in your own ward will attend schools in Lichfield District. They're in Burton and Cannock and Rugeley school planning districts.
No, that's not true.
I've literally just looked it up on Staffordshire County Council's website.
Well, I've got children at Netherstowe School. I've got children at the Friary. So I've got children at the King Edward, so I'm not too sure.
It's not about getting every single young person in there, because I prefer to private schools then, simply because there'll be some children from the Lichfield District in private schools 80 miles away, right? So let's just try and, you know, let's make it realistic about how many children we can get, young people can get involved.
I'm driving
number of schools. Yeah,
I'm driving that show. The entirety of Olrewas Village is in the Burton School Planning District, so those children will be attending schools in almost all circumstances in Burton. Obviously, the County Council has a priority list and the ability to move people in and around those as possible. Certainly, the footprint of large areas of our district don't fall within the Lichfield and Burntwood School Planning Districts. I mean, I'm looking at Councillor Yates, who a lot of your kids in your area will be attending schools in Tamworth for obvious reasons.
And Birmingham.
Yeah. So I think there is a wider piece that we can do here to reach out to schools which may not, the actual physical footprint of the school not be in the district, but potentially their intake and we don't have catchment areas anymore, but are very likely to be drawing from us. And I'm sure if we can engage with those schools and say, do you have any kids who live in these types of postcodes or who live in Lichfield District, then there may be an alternative and there may be a way there to get the views of more young people. And I think it's really important that we don't, through not knowing where these boundaries don't overlap and do overlap, etc., we don't want to be missing potentially people who could be really involved, who could be really engaged, who would want to bring really positive kind of viewpoints to this council. I think that's something that we absolutely need to be looking at, and because of the way that school planning districts map onto districts, it may well be a big piece of work, but I think it is really important to make sure that we are reaching out as wide as possible. That I wouldn't want anybody to be kind of missing out because they happen to go to a different school or something.
We have from the previous ONS that will be taken on board. I think what we're looking at, and I think it does relate to what Councillor Woodward has said, is we've got to start again, and we've got to really exactly work out where we are and how we're going to engage with those schools. There are many schools, you're quite correct, and there's many schools which also offer a different, you know, with the SEND schools. I mean, we have the Queen's Croft here on it, but I'm aware that there are plenty others, including one in my ward, which in fact two, because there's a satellite one at Loxley School, and you've got one. So I'm acutely aware that there are those to try and engage with those schools that we can. Obviously, it's capacity, and you know, if there was an update on everyone, not too sure how we're going to manage that, but nevertheless, we have to send that invitation out, I suspect.
We just want some engagement, and it could be representative, of course. You know, we know what it's like for elections. You don't get everybody doesn't vote. So I think get a further report back, and then we can look at that.
Well, I said, you know, that we, Gary has said, and it was remiss of me to say that obviously I'm hoping to get a report back that I can take to bring a report back February 2025.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I've got Di next, and then Jamie.
Yeah, I was, it is history really, but I was concerned in the first case, in the first instance, when you first set up the youth council, that you, and I mentioned this, that you were really targeting too few schools. And I think that was could well be one of the mistakes, because other schools that missed out by not being contacted may not be too happy with that. We are, now you say you've got 11, but have you thought about?
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt, we have approached 11.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. You've approached 11, but before you didn't. I think as well that it might be a good idea to consider year 6 in the primary school, because a lot of them, they're very articulate. They've got schools councils. If you approach some of those, they will grow up with you and get far more involved in a youth council than some of those that are at the top end of their education, who are going to be moving on to other things, whether it's work, apprenticeships, universities, wherever. So some of them will move out of the district anyway. So I think that that's important, to look at the cross-section of people. Often as well, young people in secondary schools are looking for work experience. Maybe you can get involved a little bit in that, because work experience and opportunities are few and far between now, because a lot of employers are very reluctant to take on these people. And so I think that you need to look at a wider aspect. And how did you envisage starting this off? Would it be asking these young people what they want rather than dictating to them? Because with some of them, that is not what we want, or you want, is not what they want. And so it's important really to find the things that interest them. And maybe later on you can actually talk to them about things that you would like to have there. But I think it's vital that the young people, that they've got to own it from the very beginning. If they don't own it, you'll lose them. So I hope that you do look at various things like that. But when was the last time you had the youth council? Because I wasn't aware that it had finished. So has it not been going for a while?
No, so we have been trying to meet the youth council. So we tried, I think there was some scheduled meetings in spring and summer term. However, unfortunately, we weren't quorate, so not enough youth councillors attended for it to be quorate. Hence the work over the summer and into September to re-engage schools. We were planning to have another meeting in October. However, again, only 2 youth councillors confirmed that they would be attending. So again, we weren't going to be quorate.
And what about year 6? Is that an
Been
idea.
mentioned before, isn't it?
Year 6 was mentioned, councillor Booker raised it. I think that's I don't disagree. I think entirely. I don't want to, it's complicated enough at the moment where we're at to further complicate it and trying to involve, if we can't get the cohort that we've initially started looking at, to go to another cohort. And I'm not saying it's wrong, it is actually right that but I think it's a progression that we can understand and integrate them in terms of going forward. I'd like to see the youth council working, and then we can see how we can again improve it. And I would certainly endorse what's been said, because I didn't disagree when councillor Booker raised it last time. And in fact, she also was keen in terms of the role at school as well, because that was in her patch. And role at school is one of those that we've approached, but no response. So, but as I said in my opening comments, is that we are where we are, but I think there's still reasons for us to be hosting a youth council.
Well, it depends on the work that's going on. There may be answers coming out of there or directions to go, because you might find that a younger set will actually be more involved than the ones that say just about to leave school and just move on. And so if you try not to have conclusions early on, just look at that, find out, and then just go from there, really, and say the best practice elsewhere would be useful.
Yeah, we've got all those, and that's exactly what the Office of Working Group will dilute, because the information that they've got for this evening is no different to the last meeting. So that is where we're trying to digest and work to, was those suggestions coming forward. That's what, so.
Yeah.
I respect that obviously you wanted a verbal report, but it is work in progress. And
no, thank you.
And for me, Chair, I'm disappointed that we've got where we're at, but I believe that it's worth pursuing.
I think you get to disagreement here. Councillor Jamie Chadley.
I'm repeating lots of what other people have said. It was just in relation to, is the remit for the people that are looking at it to decide whether or not to continue with the youth council, or is it how best to set a youth council up, or is it merely a means of finding the best way to get youth involvement in stuff that we do, so that we can be guided by them, which doesn't necessarily come through sitting down as a council. That might be an email address, it might be contact, permission to have that contact in the first place, and send them a questionnaire. And I'm not surprised you're not getting engagement to schools, because once they get into sixth form, they've got exams on, they've got all of the other performance things that they have to do. It's not priority for the school, and it's probably not a priority of the child either. To get younger children involved is a good idea, probably all secondary ages. I know year 6 got mentioned, not all secondary ages. And if they get involved at 7, at least they've got 4 or 5 years before they leave to actually understand what the process is, because it can be quite daunting. It can take a year to find out what's happening, then they've gone off to university, live somewhere else for 10 years, then discovered this district's really nice.
Just for clarification, we weren't dealing with just sixth formers. This was open from year 7.
Okay.
Right through. A lot of those that attended were also engaged with their own school councils. Okay, and the format would be that the school would hold elections but the age gap was 11 to 18, so it wasn't just those that were going to disappear. And in fact, actually, from some of the observations, I only ever tended just observing, sat at the back, because of just out of interest. But I will say some of the real engagement within the process was actually from the year 7, 8, 9s that were there, which was really does enhance, why I wouldn't object to year 6, because actually, funny enough, it was those that were, you know, were coming up with ideas. I think you're quite right with regards to those that are in the 6th form. There's a lot more, certainly in the upper 6th, or whatever it is, year 13. Year 13, put the new head on. In year 13, yes, their minds are completely on getting their grades to get their to universities of their choice. So of course they're not wanting to sit around, you know, and so I think we acknowledge that. A lot of participation and good participation were from the younger cohorts.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I recommend outnumbered, and the sort of questions that Karen challenges a parent is always useful. John, please, and then Colin, and then it looks like Miles is present up here. Small, I'll just write it small, Miles.
Small one.
Small, yeah.
Based on what Councillor Roberts has said, that again, schools in Mile Oak that go to secondary school are outside of our area, so that they're, you know, they're a different district. The question is that if children live within the area, is it open to them if a way to access them could be found? The other thing is why just schools? What about scouts groups? You know, that to be able to maybe work towards a badge for local government and whatever else, that they could get them interested, and other special interest groups perhaps. And I think the other thing as well is that social media is a big thing for them. And I think to try to do it any other way, especially when they're so spread out, that you're not going to get people interested unless they have immediate access and the ability to communicate with one another.
Well, if we follow Australia, we'll be, I'm looking at an MP.
Yeah.
If we follow Australia, then we might be banning 16-year-olds and under on social media, but I don't think it's hit the agenda yet. So
There was a Westminster Hall debate this week. So.
There you go. So
if you follow Guernsey, you might be voting at 16. So
yeah. So take those on point. As we say, we are. This is a working group. We're not. A lot of these were raised.
Nothing off the agendas, but you don't need to find out what's the best. Thank you, Colin, and then.
I was simply drawing your attention that Councillor Hill had a question.
Look, it's on my list. Who's on my list?
Yeah, I was just letting you know.
Miles, who's also on my list. Thank you.
Thank you. It was just to pick up on what was said. I think Jamie said about it not being a priority schools, which I can understand. I wonder whether a way of kind of tapping into, or maybe making it more of a priority, will thought be given to trying to have a way in on the curriculum. So I understand that it has a bit more of a place in the curriculum when I went through school, which is one of my there's about that time when politics wasn't mentioned at all. Is there a citizenship module, I think, these days, or
ECA.
to know more about this?
Yes,
ESHE. It has a bit more of a presence on the curriculum, so is a way in and saying, well, this is something that is on your agenda. So I mean, I don't know whether any thoughts being given about that, rather than just an email out of the blue that says, do you want to do this, head teacher? Say, as part of your curriculum, are you interested in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing we're exploring is obviously a lot of schools have their own school councils, don't they? So again, can we get in and speak to some of those school councils, or look at a way that we could bring together chairs of school councils together, or again be able to dissipate different kind of engagement methods through those existing school councils where they're working well, rather than reinventing the wheel as well. So yeah, as the chair said, nothing's off the table, and we're looking at all and any options that will help us achieve that overarching goal that we talked about at the moment, which is giving our young people an opportunity to share their views and opinions on what matters most to them.
Yeah,
So just to elaborate on that, when we sent out that re-engagement email to schools over the summer, as you suggested, Councillor Trent, we did sort of pitch the idea of, as the schools are going to be running their own elections to elect members to youth council, could they integrate that into their PSHE work, have a day talking about democracy? We did make that pitch to them. As I say, we didn't get much response, unfortunately, but that is something that we have tried to do.
Relatively recently, middle of this yearish. I spend a lot of time working with teachers and schools. Emailing schools in the summer, not always going to get picked up. And emailing in September, a lot of stressy people trying to figure out seating plans. So maybe timing that email in a slightly different way might find it slightly less congested or more monitored inboxes.
I take that absolutely as firm advice, and I know that we've got a number of former teachers here would concur with you, and I wouldn't question your advice there. So these are the things that we can take back to the working group and then hopefully bring forward in February.
There's one more question, just what should have borne from Brian. So you want to wind up, but
You mentioned obviously at the working group, how much time do you see you're going to spend on this in the future?
do you get overtime?
Do you have a time factor for it?
Chief Operating Officer.
No, we've got a number of different colleagues on the working group, and they're not just the government team, but other colleagues across the organisation who are really interested in this as well, and want to be part of developing either, you know, the next phase or looking at other youth engagement methods. So from an officer perspective, again, there's real commitment in finding the right methods to make this work. I'm conscious that everyone has other elements and facets to their job. Confident that we can deliver this within the working group.
But you haven't got no time. You haven't got a month, 2 months, 6 months.
So we've set ourselves the target of we want to be able to be bringing recommendations forward by February. So the working group are working up a little bit of a delivery plan, and obviously each officer will have some individual tasks and research that they're taking forward to develop this.
Okay, thank you. I just mentioned that at my school, when we started the school council, the first thing they asked for, you said nothing off the table, but the first thing they asked for was a swimming pool. So you've got these manage expectations of this sort of thing, right? And the other thing is, Robertson was saying, if you got at my school, the head teacher will still email me from Canada on holiday about various things. So it just depends on how you are, but I'm not.
It's the school where you're a governor or the school.
I call it my school. I've been governors there for 20 years. At the beginning, it's been embarrassing, really, but yeah. So, but the never a dull moment at my school with our children. So, thank you very much for that, and appreciate that. And there we get on. Hope you're using the right sort of fonts and loud, noisy, coloured paper and stuff to communicate. Those things do seem to work. Okay, little tip there. Right, sorry I nearly missed you. Next, so I'll go back to where I should have gone. Where I meant to, well, I inadvertently. Agenda item number 8, which is the social value policy statement and guidance. I was beginning to say before I correctly interrupted was that on recommendations aren't really recommendations there, 2.1, 2 and 3. Say the recommendation really is on 2.5, which is the committee may wish to comment on, hopefully with questions as well, on the scope of the statement, the level of social value, proportion, and unlocking social value. So those last 3 bullet points, I think we can concentrate on really. I'm sure the cabinet member wants feedback on that and any challenges I'm sure he looks forward to.
Yes, please, Chair. I'll open in summary. That really is where we're driving at. So, members, this council is no stranger to the concept of social value, and as a priority, it's certainly been on the radar for a number of years now. I think it's probably about 5.5 years since Councillor Ball mentioned it to me when I was a brand new cabinet member, and my response was, "Huh?" And it sort of advanced from there. Fortunately, I know a little bit more about it now. But members, you'll see the Social Value Act under the last government did place a duty on us to consider how the economic, social and environmental well-being of this district can be improved through the procurements of goods and services and through the ways that we as a council do business. Incidentally, it's also obliquely referred to, although less specifically, within the most recent Procurement Act, where they say that we should be maximising public benefit by the things that we do. But I'd hope it's uncontroversial that members could agree with me tonight that it's something we should all be focusing on to improve the situations of our residents and making sure that we as a council are doing our business in the right way. And so the policies that are before you tonight are appearing as standalone documents, but they're also being embedded as business as usual ways of working throughout the Lichfield 2050 strategy. And I've got to say, as among district councils, we appear to be among the earlier adopters of this. We do take you through other authorities' approaches in paragraphs 3.10 through to 1.5. But I have got to comment that strong commitments to this across local government does seem to be surprisingly slow. Given the importance and the potential benefits of embracing social value procurement properly. Locally, we have recruited Jared to the role on a part-time basis. He seems to be making some very impressive initial waves, including most recently securing some investment from one of our partners, which allowed a local dance school to participate, in fact sent a very large number of children to European competition, and they have also recently made donations to a local food bank. 3.17 onwards, we refer to some of the other early successes, but we've managed on relatively scanty information to deliver £3.2 million worth of social value commitments across the district on effectively what was draft guidance before this comes before you. And we also set out within that where we think the logical next steps will lie. Ensuring that this is fully embedded within all council procurement is very much the end game. And you will see, again, within the document, how we anticipate delivering that, depending on the nature and the scale of our procurement activity. And so, Chair, you have correctly identified that what I'm seeking from the committee tonight is an overview of the documents that are before you, a ratification that our approach is something that you're comfortable with and something that you think that you're heading in the right direction, and any other ideas that you may like us to consider going forward. And so we append to that the social value guidance and the policy statement that we'll be working from. Sarah, is there anything that you would like to bring?
I think I would just like to add that we're now seeing that, for example, with our high value tenders where the suppliers are more competent, the values within minimal figures of one another, it's now becoming sort of the deciding factor on who we award the contracts to in a way and what they are going to deliver above and beyond the contract. And using, I guess, the car park demolition contractor as an example, where we had a really good response to our tender, and we had about 2 or 3 or 4 contractors where you could really differentiate the difference between them in terms of their experience, their knowledge, and their capabilities. But really what became sort of the deciding factor among the project team was really what else can they deliver for us above and beyond what we're asking them to do contractually, and what are they going to deliver for our residents and local communities.
Like the little portholes to look through, that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any questions and points to make? Please, David.
Thank you, Chair. 3 from me, I think. So it's quite short for me. First one, who is the social value steering group?
So it's being, at the moment, we've had a request for people to join it, but it's a wide range of different officers really. And I think a lot of buy-in through the processes that we've done, or tender processes. So at the start of the process, we'll say, you know, you've got to, can we consider social value? And there may be a little bit of pushback, but since we've been delivering now, or including it as part of the process, people have asked to join it. So we've got major projects team, policy and strategy are part of it. We've got some officers within leisure. So we're getting a request now across the council for people to join it.
Follow up on that, sorry.
No,
I will keep under 3, but I will keep my.
I'm sure there's a follow up.
So on that, I was just wondering whether there's been any thought given to how that group engages with members, because members might be able to just point you at that project, which just needs a little bit of seed funding to get off the ground, or for a new roof on a community centre, or a village hall, which is got a tree growing in it, or whatever is happening around the district. Local members might be that little bit extra connected to what's happening in and around there. It's possibly not hugely helpful to say, well, we want one of each party on there and it's going to make it difficult to meet and all the rest of it. But some consideration about how that engages with members to really make sure that we're connecting up to the community as much as possible, I think would be useful.
I think Councillor Robertson MP, it's
Well, we've got to stop doing that.
I think I think it's definitely something that there is an ambition to get a lot more member involvement, but while we're definitely embedding it as being part of the identity of the council, I think necessarily it needs to be more officer driven and officer led at the moment. It may well be, in fact, I would certainly imagine that in the fullness of time it will be something that we have buy-in across all members, and whether that means that there is permanent member presence within that steering group, I don't know, but it may be that that is a healthy way to go in the fullness of time.
Thanks, yeah.
Carry on, thank you, Chair. So going back to the report, section 3, paragraphs kind of 11, 12, 13, 14, kind of identifies some councils that we want to work alongside there. I note that Preston isn't listed, who were kind of some of the progenitors of this. Now, I don't actually think the Preston model in its entirety, as Preston have introduced it, is entirely replicable in our district, because we don't have that same type of significant public sector organisations, anchor institutions, they refer to them. But I'm sure there is some learning from the way that they've approached those relationships, and particularly the way they've approached those relationships between their suppliers outside of their, you know, the inter-supplier relationship, as well as just the one from council to them. Which I've got.
Yes, I'll bring Sue in afterwards. Yeah, thank you.
And then the final one, this paper hasn't been signed off by the 151 and monitoring officer. Is there any reason for that?
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
No, I think it has. I think maybe the paper doesn't reflect it's been signed off.
Okay.
Issue rather than it.
I would have imagined that it would have been, because he sent it to me.
Yeah, I mean, if we can just make sure that's tidied up. Yeah.
Good idea. I just say on the learning from other councils, that I do think that's good. I spend a lot of time looking at other councils and reports and seeing how they get on. It's also useful to learn that they don't advertise themselves. Councils where whatever you're looking at has gone wrong, so you learn from those mistakes. But certainly this is unusual to have this down, and appreciated that. Do you have another question, by the way?
No, that's my very boss.
You're through, is it? Okay, that was that. Sue and then Miles, please.
Just picking up Dave's first point, member involvement. I think that's really important. I mean, one issue that I've followed up for the past few days with the Chief Executive and Chief Operating Officer is about donations. And certainly in 3.17, I think it says there in one of the paragraphs anyway, refers to seeking donations, but there seems to be a lack of understanding within Lichfield District Council as an organisation that food banks, for example, the food bank isn't just Lichfield Food Bank, worthy as their cause is, but there are other food banks serving parts of the area. So just gathering that sort of member intelligence, I think, is really important. Picking up the second point that Dave made about the Preston model, just to let members know that the Labour group are now members of the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network, and one of the really useful points about being part of that network is the sort of learning that we can get across councils. The councils that are referred to in this report they're all pretty much top tier councils, metropolitans, counties, and so on. The Cooperative Council's Innovation Network has membership across the whole range of councils. So, you know, Mets, counties, down to parish councils and community councils. So there's lots of learning that can be shared from there. And certainly, you know, one of its raison d'etre really is to increase social value through community participation and cooperative work in co-production across all sectors. Just a little bit of an advert for the CCIN there, Chair.
Yes, yeah, I noticed that. An interest. Councillor Trent, and then Councillor Ball, I think.
Chair, at 3.15, you mentioned contact with PCN. Have they replied, and what's that reply been?
We haven't had any response yet, but I think as well Joe has been to quite a few networking events, social value conferences, and he said generally it feels quite underrepresented by local authorities and especially by district council. So we definitely think we're probably a bit of a leader as well, or becoming one. And I think as well, we've done a bit of a benchmark against like a national procurement strategy in terms of social value and where we are. And I think we looked at it as a bigger picture and marked ourselves as almost developing. But actually, if we look at it from a district council network or district council perspective, we're probably way ahead of where other district councils are. But no, we haven't had much of a responses yet, but we'll keep pushing.
Thank you. Councillor Clyne-Ball, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was pleased to get the name check from Councillor Strachan earlier, because I think I introduced this 5.5 years ago when I became a councillor and mentioned to him.
You did, and I'll give credit where it's due, Colin.
At that point, the Benson model. And I'm also pleased to see him here this evening, looking well, because I know he was very busy last week. Moving on to the points, I commend this. I mean, this is really a step forward, and it builds on the motion that Dave and I see. I can be familiar as well. Put to the council maybe 5 years ago about local procurement. So this is really important. Now, another council I would suggest looking at, again, it's a Met, Leeds City Council are adopting the donut model, donut economic model in terms of how they do the procurement and the activities. And that's certainly worth exploring. I can talk outside the meeting in detail what the donut model is about, but it is about making sure that everyone in the community benefits from what the council is doing, and it's more about a community involvement thing. So it's not just about the council itself doing stuff, but it's working with partners and other volunteer organisations to make sure that everybody lives within the donut and gets the benefits of what's happening within that area. But I can talk more about that offline. But I certainly think talking with Leeds and get a bit more information would help support what you're doing, because certainly the multicoloured list of areas that you're looking at would certainly sit within that model, I think.
Thank you.
Say other fast food is available.
So do I need to declare an interest, because I really like donuts?
Yeah, well, there you are, yeah. Jamie, do you want to come in? Question?
Just one quick one. In relation to local procurement, is there an order at which we buy things? I can understand why we would aim to go for the district first, and then do we look at Staffordshire, and then do we look outside Staffordshire? Or do we simply draw a donut around Lichfield and select from within the nearest area that can provide us the best?
It's ranked on page 64. So first rank would be Lichfield district itself. The second rank would be Staffordshire County, and the third would be within the West Midlands regional area.
Right. Just to me, it seems you might have to travel a long way to go to some parts of Staffordshire when it might be just down the road over a particular boundary.
It is true that bits of Staffordshire are a long way away, but they're still Staffordshire.
Okay.
Can I say on the policy statement, which is on page 74 on the appendix, social value policy statement June 2024. On 1.2, the Procurement Act 2023 requires contracting authorities to award contracts to the quote, the most advantageous tender quote, placing more weight on quote, I should say, placing more weight on criteria such as social value, proportionate and related to the subject of the contract. It's got another question a bit further down on that paragraph, but how difficult is that to do? Whereby you can justify this if there's a challenge from a company or a contractor says you've not been fair, you've not looked at this. I mean, if it's tenders, it's straightforward. It's just a figure, providing they fit everything else. But on this one, I just wondered how that was in practice more difficult. Or
see, the best thing I could possibly do is hand that off to our chief procurer. How that actually works in practice.
We've been clear in our tender documents how we're going to evaluate and score all of our RFQs and tenders. So we're really clear up front on how we will evaluate it, and there's a scoring matrix that sits behind it. So we haven't had any challenges yet.
No.
And I think
that might be done on experience, possibly. Yeah. And you haven't had any challenges and say, well, we're very good at this, although we're not so good at that. So could you consider that in your, that?
What we've done as well, so I know I've given an example
social value question that we use as part of our tenders, but we've got 3 different questions. We've got like a really long one where we use for our higher value tenders, and then we've tailored them so we've got a really short version as well, and we'll use that when it's more lower value RFQs, or if we're going to be going out to more local smaller suppliers, just because we want to make sure that it's proportionate to the value of the contract. So no, we haven't really, and we've also found that
Maybe don't. I'm just.
but we found that where we are going out to for smaller, lower value contracts, we were a bit apprehensive and we wondered whether it would be a disadvantage. But we've actually found it's the opposite, and they know the area a lot better. So they will say, actually, we want to support this local charity or this local community group. And on the other side, the largest suppliers actually may say something like, we support local charities in London or somewhere else. So it's actually probably been the other way around, where we get a better response from our local smaller suppliers.
Yeah, that's great, thanks. On 1.5, it sounds a bit like earlier on with planning. If you section 106 funding, if you talk to the developers early on, and this is about communicating, I think with bodies. Is this working as well? If you understand my point and my question, communicating early on. So social value requires obviously to think about how they achieve outcomes in a more integrated way at the pre-procurement stage. So getting that right, is that easy to do? Is it difficult to do?
It's got easier because I think people were speaking a lot more about the value of including social value as part of our tenders, and the added benefits of getting commitments through it. So it's getting a lot easier, where people are also, like I'm saying, wanting to join the steering group and be able to have an influence on what we're asking. And we have a really good engagement as well with suppliers on it. A lot of good feedback, a lot of good buy-in as well.
We're optimistic about this.
Very.
Yeah, Dave, please.
Can I just ask if there was any reply to the question about why not Preston?
Yeah. There wasn't a response there. On the list of councils, the one that wasn't on there was Preston, although Dave gave reasons why it might not be on there. But
so the reasons why we've got the ones listed in the report is through Jared's networking opportunities. So where he's gone to conferences, this is where we've heard about what other authorities are doing or other councils. So it hasn't been that we
recommend Preston.
Absolutely. And Leeds, yeah.
You're about to look into it now, aren't you?
Councils in
Yeah,
right.
listed down.
Many of whom are districts.
Well, I think the feedback basically is we're all favour and supportive and pleased to see how it's going, and had some suggestions, but not too many that you haven't already thought of yourselves. So just a report later on. Yeah, is that helpful for you?
That's helpful.
Thank you.
Not very helpful, just it's a bit helpful there. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next item then, 8, is the Little District Community Safety Partnership update for autumn 2024. Lizzie Barton will stay there for the work programme as well. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm going to help you now. The recommendation is just for members to comment on the update and planned activities detailed in the report, and provide any wider feedback to guide future actions, and to note the Community Safety Partnership will seek the views of the Overland Scrutiny Committee as part of the development of its new community-led strategy. So we know that, and so the first one is perhaps what we need to concentrate on. But if you want to give a introduction here, Chair. Sorry, that was this morning.
That was this morning. Yes, Chair. I think for me, Litchfield District Community Safety Partnership, in terms of a strategy, I'm going to be quite blunt, has been trying to extract blood out of a stone in terms of progression. And we thought we were doing okay, but then we look at it that an officer leaves and so forth, and we have to rethink and kind of act and start again, a bit like the youth council. So where are we at? got Lizzie with me here, and Lizzie has taken this on with I'm going to say a degree of passion, and also a learning curve for us all. And one of the things that trying to create this strategy was this a community-led strategy that we can look at with working with Impera Analytics, who are the people that did our social progress index. This is the word index I couldn't think of. And by talking to them, there was something that they'd already done, modelled it, put it out to practice and everything else. An example that would be within the report at 3.18, we would have Birmingham City Council. So the work that they would do is through the partnership we'd employ 2 people, and we would then collate the evidence and everything else that works with it, that then becomes that community-led strategy, as with the social progress index. So we've presented the thing to the commissioner, and with our partners in Bromford Housing and County Council, and obviously with the commissioner's funding and our own funding, we're in a position now that we can progress with that, and it will hopefully bring out the issues of looking for that concern us all. In particular, obviously, if I was to use antisocial behaviour, it'll be something that can drill down to ward level. So rather than having a strategy that covers the district, this actually works into the ward level, etc. So within wards within Burntwood, wards within Lichfield, and some of the rural wards maybe, etc., that we can then be able to say, well, actually, this is where the issues are. So I'm quite enthused by this, and I know that talking only from last week, where Lizzie and I attended the commissioners' forum, I think there's a keen eye from other district members and boroughs throughout Staffordshire, that we could then obviously create a model that would actually work right through across the county. So we're very keen. It is something that is not being done within this authority, although obviously it's been worked at and it's done. So hopefully we're going to be able to push it out, and then strategies that would be created from it are because it's what has been delivered from the community, and as I say, community led. So that's my introduction. You've got the report between you. If Lizzie's got anything also to add to it, then please do, Lizzie.
Great introduction, but happy.
We are happy to take questions, yes, whether I'll answer them or...
We're happy for you to be happy to take them.
I'm extremely happy.
We see it as a challenge, don't we? What do you got, Sue, from the pre-meeting? Sue and Jamie, then Di, and Colin. So Sue Woodward.
Yeah, I've mentioned it before, but I don't see a great deal of focus on outcomes. I don't doubt that there's lots of activity, there's lots of stuff happening, going to a street stall here and a street stall there. But what are the outcomes? How can we measure the impacts? I notice on the list of events, for example, it doesn't mention the Chasewater Awareness Day. And I know because I was involved, I can't quite remember on what role, but perhaps as chair of Chasewater Friends, I was involved in some of the pre-meeting 2 or 3 hours with 15, 20 people around the table, and there were half a dozen of them. And it's not even mentioned here, because at the last minute, I think our officers passed it over to the county council officers to arrange it, and the county council officers were taken by surprise. So that's just one, if you like, example of lots and lots of activity, lots of meetings, lots of talk, but nothing in terms of outcomes. So that's disappointing. I would have liked to have seen in the report some real clarity about the delivery plan. This is the delivery plan. These are the outcomes that we want, and this is what we feel we're going to achieve. And then, you know, that would have some more impact. I just think it's all such a disconnected activity and scattergun stuff going on that doesn't have a sort of single strategic thread. So it's my concern that resource goes into this. It doesn't necessarily make a difference to our folks on the ground who are experiencing antisocial behaviour or whatever.
Focus on outcome is the issue. That's
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in time this is going to be embedded, comes for sure. To address where we have with been doing, and again from the 3.23, there is a bit of a mistake there. It's Armitage and Anzaker Village Day, but you know, so we've been out to resolve the outcomes and to measure it, so we know where we're at. In the absence of a strategy, that isn't. We haven't got that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is building that strategy, because I recognise exactly what you're saying. We are clearly adrift and we have been limping along with our partners, but it's not that there's a will. So this is, since this came on board and we have looked at it, this is focusing exactly what you're saying. So we recognise those shortcomings and so forth, and to ensure that what you're saying is going to be delivered, because we'll have a key strategy from the partnership where the delivery group will be able to have a proper directed view on it, and they can feed back as well, and we in turn will come back to ONS with that as we go. So this is putting the bricks and more to it, but we recognise, because we've had those conversations, and I absolutely do recognise what you're saying.
So before I bring you in, just to say that the deadline, well, not the deadline, but the target date is May 2025. So come back to this committee. It's going to come back in.
We will certainly, as we get nearer to it, we will be definitely wanting to come back, and we'll have a strategy that then we can put forward.
No, Richard's right. Scrutiny just doesn't happen at committee meetings. I bend his ear regularly about these sorts of issues, and I do recognise that Lizzie has done a lot of work in the period that since she took over this particular role to sort of get to grips with what's going on. But just to get that clarity, this is the strategic plan. This is what happens in terms of delivery. That would be helpful, because it seems to me there's a real disconnect between the strategic group, and I know Di, as the former shadow cabinet member for community engagement, there doesn't seem to be a connection between the strategic group of senior officers and police and so on, and the actions that are happening underneath all of that. So, you know, decisions will be made about strategic priorities, but do they really connect with delivery and actions, and therefore outcomes? I'm telling you what I've already told you before, but I think it's important just to recognise that, you know, resource goes into this community safety partnership. It's a statutory requirement for all councils to have a community safety partnership, and in theory they should be working very effectively, pulling councils, police, you know, housing providers and so on all together, so everybody's pulling in the same direction. That doesn't feel like it's happening at the moment. So I look forward to a new strategy and delivery plan and action plan and outcomes list.
Councillor Checklin, Chairman Checklin, please.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to say something very similar. Coming from a policing background, we targeted areas by crime stats. Generally speaking, crime stats tended to fit in with the areas of most social need in the first place. So it's tying those different things together. And I appreciate that there's a strategic overview has been said, but back in 2008, we had what we call sector action groups, which involve fire, police, youth, housing, town teams, which I think is what you're aiming at. And I did hear talk we were having an interdepartmental strategy similar to that. So all the departments talk together, so they deal with the issues as a council and look at the problems as a council. That I'm sure that was about 12 months ago. Is there any further? Are we any further forward on that? And are you looking to set up such a thing? So I'd call it a DAG, I suppose, a district action group, in that you get the bodies together that do put the strategy into place, and then you will get end results, because there'll be tasks at each particular meeting as to what the problem is, who's going to address it, who's taking responsibility. I think that's what you're aiming at. But it sounds like we're sort of reinventing the wheel a little bit.
I have to confess, I'm not
No,
so sure about the groups that you're referencing, and that hasn't been incorporated in the work of the CSP. I don't know if that's a wider piece of work that.
I don't know.
I thought Jamie was being very local, but
I understood that the departments within the council, in fact.
I help from back here on that.
You probably can, because that's probably where I heard it.
I think what you're referencing, Councillor Checklin, is the locality based working plan that we were starting to pull together, and it was around 12 months ago, which was to say that starting with our ward walks, we'd identify the issues within places and then work out how different arms of the council could work together to directly address those. That wasn't specifically around community safety, although that might form one part of it, but that was really across everything the council does, was to take a sort of locality based approach rather than a departmental approach to it. So I think it cuts across this work, but wasn't sort of core to it.
Right. Okay. My interpretation was that it was towards improving communities, and therefore I felt that it sat within this strategy. But I'll accept that. In relation to a couple of other points within the paper, antisocial behaviour activities, if we can avoid using the term mugger in any of the stuff that's put forward, it creates great headlines and scares every old person from going into an area where they've just put a mugger. As I found on Harville's Hawthorne, when they put a mugger in the park, and I got so many complaints. So the also made reference to the fact you're looking for community volunteers to gain strategic and insight. Those people who had problems themselves. Do you have people in mind for that? Are you looking for volunteers? Because I would urge you not to necessarily take the volunteers, but find someone who's had an issue and try and persuade them, because they'll be the people who really understand the issue rather than the people who want to be at the forefront, raising their own profile. Those were my points.
Regards the two board will be guided by the Imperial, because they will be monitoring it. They will be doing the work for us, so that will be their employment. The partnership will, as the paper says, the partnership will be basically authorising that to be done. So it will be, from what they've done in the past, is that they will take two people that are fully grounded in dealing with the issues. Just on a separate issue, for example, I don't know whether you've come across the group Mama. They are exceptionally, I can't remember what it stands for now, but it's to do in terms of work that they are doing are from two inspirational young people that have had life experiences that I would never have dreamt of myself, and they lessons from what they want to of changing their lives going forward, and they've been able to do that, and they put their energies into ensuring that what their mistakes aren't repeated by young people going forward. And to me, that's, you know,
It sounds like the sort of people that he's recommending, isn't it, by the sound of it? as volunteers?
Say, Chair, that MAMA
Yeah.
is, means mindfulness, awareness and martial arts. And it's a group that was set up first of all in Birmingham, but doing lots of other work. So mindfulness, awareness and martial arts.
Thanks. I couldn't remember.
Talk from the speakers at the ladies' day. Yes, she was very impressive.
Yeah, and you will be, you know. So we are in the terms of some of the monies that we've got, the commissioners' money that we have to spend within our communities. We around antisocial behaviour, we are going to fund Mama in terms of the work that they're doing to obviously help us reduce antisocial behaviour, and so I think that can only be a good thing, because they've lived it, and when I say lived it, they've, you know,
a lot of people have
issues.
Just getting the right people into
Yeah, well, I think I was a little cautious, wasn't I? In terms of, I felt that I wanted to know a little bit more about them. I know that I'd heard of them, and I'd heard them speak at a Wheel of Lichfield event. I wanted to, and we had nearly 2 hours. It was only scheduled for an hour, but I think it went on for 2 hours. I was late for another meeting, but that had to be, you know, I got a message through it, but it didn't matter. It was more internal, so it didn't matter, because I was engrossed with what I was going through. So that's the kind of thing that we are trying to do. So
I need to move on a bit. So
yeah,
got the message there. But thank you. I was next, and if you sorry, if you finished, Jamie, on that.
I have.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, before Sue actually mentioned it, I was going to say that one of my observations when I was attending the CSP meetings was that people dipped in and out, and there wasn't continuity that is required for this kind of meeting. And especially when people weren't represented and you couldn't ask the questions because there was nobody there to ask the questions of. So that was one of the things I think I felt was really not working very effectively. As far as the antisocial behaviour tasking fund on 3.7, the bridge is mentioned, but not everybody can be accommodated at the bridge. There are a lot of people that would be there but can't be because there aren't the places. You're talking about 8 to 12 years. Why 8 to 12 years? And I presume that eventually that there will be things targeted towards mainstream, because that is important as well, because the ASB, have I got the wrong end of the stick? Because ASB is an important issue across all schools, and people within the community do blame the schools for the ASB that goes on, although it's not that. It's often from other things that go on, and poor parenting is one of them. But I just think that why 8 to 12? Why not older children? Because older children are causing a few problems at times. Not all of them. It's always the
8 to 12. We'll just deal with that question then.
I think it might be worth just taking a little bit of a step back. So we absolutely acknowledge that there needs to be a strategic direction for the partnership and also a way of measuring outcomes. And part of the proposal that you'll see before you includes some images of data dashboards that are used by Birmingham City Council that we want to replicate within the district so that we can target those outcomes, so we can target activity. What we've been doing over the last 6 months, and it goes definitely back to your question, Councillor Evans, is that we have delivered what we can within the remainder of the year, knowing that we then want to make sure that we have that strategic direction moving forward from 2025. Each of the activities that you see before you, whether that's the Locality Deal Fund, the Antisocial Behaviour Tasking Fund or the Violence Alliance Refund, it represents money that comes from the PFCC that has very specific ambitions that we need to then follow. What we lack locally is our own data and our own statistics. Then go back to the PFCC and say, actually, we need to widen this, we need to amend this, and we need to make sure that the work we do reflects the local need. And that's the ambition of the strategy. The Antisocial Behaviour Tasking Fund is a very small amount of money. It's just £5,000 a year, and that budget has to target certain areas. And this year, the area for that budget has been 8 to 12-year-olds. But that doesn't mean next year that it won't be different ages, if indeed that fund still exists. We went to a meeting on Thursday with the PFCC, and they have reconfirmed that our funding is available for next year, which is a real bonus because that funding is not guaranteed year on year, but we have got another year's worth of funding, if not more, and hopefully more. And indeed, the PFCC is keen to provide us with a multi-year settlement. Our ambition is to introduce not just a data dashboard that we can measure using the data such as you've suggested, Councillor Checkland, to make sure we target the right areas, but also develop a strategy that takes into consideration local issues fed by local views, as well as the overview and scrutiny committee and other consultation methods to make sure we have a strategy we all can believe in and buy into. Picking up also on your point, Councillor Evans, absolutely there is not the right representation at the CSP board meetings. At the moment we're missing probation, which is really crucial. But what we have found over the last few months, this piece of work has galvanised the partners and they are much more enthusiastic and on board in terms of delivery. So we hope we're building the right foundations to then create a really strong way forward to hopefully deliver some real tangible difference on the ground. And we'd really love all of your input into the strategy that we do develop.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with what Sue had said earlier, because I came out of some of those meetings thinking, what has been achieved?
So did I, and that's why we're addressing where we are now. And the other thing was that the probation, we're trying to get them to come to the table. Yeah. We've fortunately at the PFC meeting that we had last week, we've now latched on to somebody that should be able to deliver it for us, that we're here. We were absent of NHS partners for a long time, and through the fact that we've done a piece of work together, we've now got them around the table, which is, so it has been, as I say, it's pulling teeth, but we're more than confident now with what's here going forward with a community-led strategy, that the input that we've got is re-energized our partners and really wanting to get something going. So as I say, they've all put some monies into the pot, so there's invested to the process. So we're starting to see it come together now, and hopefully in 12 months time we'll be saying, you know, hopefully good things. So
you'll have to, because you've been saying how enthusiastic they all are. So
well, I am
the only outcome. We've got Colin next.
I'm enthusiastic.
I'm glad that there's going to be a complete revamp of the community safety partnership, which I think is what I'm hearing, because it's been a disaster. I mean, I attended some meetings years ago with the community, and it was rambling, waste of time, and nothing was achieved. So I think targets, strategy, all good stuff. However, I've got some concerns about the community-led strategy. I'm hearing two different things. And then 13.12, it talks about volunteers. We've also heard these people will be employed, so I don't know which it is. Are they doing this in their own time as volunteers? Are they being paid to do it? These two folk are recruited. It's not clear from that statement. Secondly, I think it puts an awful lot of responsibility on two individuals who may have other responsibilities themselves, who may come from difficult backgrounds, are going to struggle. I think it's a great idea to train people up to give them the opportunity to get for the jobs, but that timetable. So if it's going to be prepared between December 24 and April 25, these folk need to be recruited before December 24. Well, isn't that now? So, you know, I do wonder about that ambition in terms of the programme. I worry about the responsibility of those two individuals, and also wonder, we've got at least, is it 1.5 people employed in community safety within our team? Why couldn't they do some of this work? What is it they do? You know, there's a few questions there that I'm concerned about. That does kind of throw doubt about A, the timetable, B, the deliverability, and C, what is our team doing now?
Because I want to go through the work programme before the end of the meeting, which is in 10 minutes time, so if you can be concise in your responses. You could, please, thank you.
The timetable is ambitious, but the organisation we're working with in Para is confident that we can deliver. There may be slight slippage towards the end, but what we're hoping to is certainly to have an direction that will help us to shape the funding bids that we put in from April moving onwards with the PFCC. The organisation we're working with has experience of doing this, and yes, they are volunteers, but they're also recompensed, not massively, but a small payment to thank them for their time. They also go through training and receive a qualification at the end. Impera has had significant success delivering this type of activity in and around Euston and other cities where they've worked with both victims and perpetrators of knife crime and led to really meaningful and impactful strategies that have had an impact. So we are working with an organisation that has great skills in doing this, and we are confident that we will deliver, but obviously we'll keep you posted on how we get on. In terms of the 1.5 members of staff we have, it is a really small team. We have a lot of activity that we have to cover within that team, from attending various meetings, whether that's the prevent agenda or other agendas to make sure that this organisation is updated about it, through to managing the hub, which is where we discuss with multi-agencies cases that are particular and acute, so that we can ensure that we target the right support to those individuals, as well as responding to complaints and concerns about ASB. So the individuals themselves carry quite a significant caseload in terms of delivering activity locally, but they will be involved and will help to lead this process, but there isn't capacity within that team to do it themselves, wholly themselves, which is why we sought some external support to do this.
Yeah.
Sorry. I hate seeming negative. I really do. But as you talked about slippage towards the end, I think there's slippage at the beginning, because it says the strategy will be prepared between December 24. It's the 2nd of December today. Everything will close down in a couple of weeks' time. Nothing will happen over the Christmas New Year period, I guess. So, you know, how quickly can these people be in place? Can they be trained? You know, when can these strategy sessions take place? This communication deliver anything by April 25? I'd much rather under promise and over deliver than over promise and under deliver. I know from personal experience that it's bitterly disappointing for everybody in the teams. I just wonder whether it's worth revisiting that timetable.
We certainly can do. I would say that the beginning December part is the research part, looking at the strategic assessment that's carried out by the PFCC, as well as our own strategic plan. So that piece of work is already underway, and the recruitment of those volunteers is from January onwards. But we are sitting down with the team, so if there are any issues that are identified early on, we can certainly be
Obviously, short question there, thank
As
you.
quick as I can, Chair. Specifically on 3.8, Violence Reduction Alliance Fund. It identifies 3 activities that have been undertaken with the funding that's there. One of which is street first aid workshops, and one is bleed kits. Looking at the serious violence duty, it requires relevant services work together to share information, allow them to target their interventions where possible through violence infrastructure, collaborate and plan to prevent and reduce serious violence. I'm not sure that those 2 interventions around supporting people after the violence has occurred is reducing violence, particularly in a situation where we know, because the police statistics are published, that around just shy of half of all crime in Lichfield is violent crime. And actually, from speaking to the police, we know a significant amount of that is domestic abuse. And that doesn't really seem to be picked up in here, other than that 30 workshops targeting young men. So whether, when this is revamped, we need to have a much clearer and stronger focus on preventing violence against women and girls and reducing domestic violence across the district.
Okay.
Just quickly on that, I mean, just as an example, the theatre workshops is something that I was looking at, because there was again some funding for that, and in terms of what Manners do, for example, I concurred with what has just been said, that it seemed to be an after an event rather than trying to get underneath the issue. And certainly the theatre workshops do that in terms of going to into schools and doing that very thing of trying to address young men, not, you know, boys at school and so forth, not going against violence against women and girls. So it is something that literally I've only just looked at to going forward, because for me, I didn't think the after bit is right. I wanted to make sure that we were, now if this doesn't work, I still want something to be doing exactly what you're saying there.
These theatre workshops have already happened, or
they're not that we have. There are existing groups, and I went to see a performance. Actually, was on vapes, but it gave me the thing that they have a program that do exactly that in terms of violence against women and girls.
Past tense with the following activities were supported.
So they've been supported, but they haven't taken place yet. So they've been supported by the partnership to take place, and they're scheduled for early next year.
Yeah. And that's why I went to actually from that went to actually see.
I would have to move on. So I think that's I'm going to stop there, because I want to get onto the work programme before we finish. What?
You do, sir.
I do, thank you, yeah. And thank you for that. And obviously we'll hopefully make that deadline of, well, your own deadline of May 2025 or April for come back.
You have to be ambitious.
Work programme, please. Agenda items, right? On the involving residents in scrutiny, this is why I wanted Liz to stay behind. Liz to stay behind. Involving residents in scrutiny, we had a pre-meeting pointing out where you can find it. It's easy to find members of the public to actually put in ideas to come to scrutiny after you've been properly looked at and considered. But that is easy, and I'm very pleased to see that. I still can't save the form, which Georgia is trying to help me on this one, but we'll do that later on. But if there's an email back to anybody who does fill in that form that's on there, they've got a record themselves, and if you can send that back to them.
It's odd because I had a record when I filled it in, so we've
Yes, okay, well, okay, right, if you want to grill you then. Right, you guys got Microsoft Forms, got 3 dots.
It's an attachment appendix that had everything I'd started.
I'm the sort of person you need to test these things on. I like that. Anyway, what I was saying was how. What I was saying it is good that it's on then. It's quite early on in our website. And otherwise, the medium-term financial strategy for next time, which we'll see what the news is from Westminster. Any other issues anybody wants to raise on the work programme? You did.
Yeah,
Very much.
back on your.
Thank you.
Thank you. The thing on the website. I also mentioned the last
Yeah, where's it? You've
meeting.
got 1 minute.
I know I've got 1 minute. The last meeting, whether we should let people know that that's there so that we can encourage them to bring things forward. And finally, empty homes policy. I asked last time. It's not recording the minutes. I've just noticed about this. When would it come back to us? I can't remember whether I had a reply at that point. Happy to be corrected if I was given the reply. My memory's failed me.
So at the moment, the team at LWMTS are carrying out research with empty home owners to inform the policy. That hasn't yet completed. So as soon as that intelligence is back, then that will inform the policy, which will come forward early next year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You've got 10 seconds.
You also said, Chair, that you'd bring up Health Priorities Forum as part of the work programme, which is now dropped off the end of the agenda, but the idea was that it isn't a standing committee, but meets as issues arise. So hopefully all members will relay concerns.
I need more volunteers for that task group as well. Okay, yeah. Thank you, everybody. There's 12 seconds to got left. If anybody's watching, stick with us. Thank you very much for watching. Can't see me, well, I'm sitting somewhere else next time.